Hello, this is Ken. The following recording was produced live during the Southern California Nar-Anon Family Group's 2023 Narathon event entitled Embracing Today, which was held in a virtual format. This recording is intended to be in keeping with the guidelines and traditions of Nar-Anon Family Groups, which strives to protect the anonymity and confidentiality of each participant. As such, only the audio portions are available and members are identified by first names only. The stories you are about to hear are told in confidence and should not be repeated outside of the program, and this recording is fully protected by all copyright laws. The reproduction or unauthorized distribution of this recording or any of the content included is strictly prohibited. We share these stories and experiences so that we might better understand this program and ourselves, and to give encouragement and help to the new member. As a reminder, this event is intended to be a fundraiser for the Nar-Anon Family Group's Southern California region in keeping with our 7th tradition, which states every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. We gratefully accept contributions in any amount. Please visit our website at naranonsocal.org and click on the Donate button on the homepage. Use the Comments dialog box to indicate if you're donating to our Narathon fundraiser. If you are donating on behalf of a group, please also include your group ID number and meeting name. The SoCal region would like to express gratitude to the Volunteer Service Committee that produced this event and who provided tech support. This includes our regional chair and host, Roxanne, as well as Dottie, Susan, Roseanne, Debbie, Trudy, Joel, and Ken. Please remember to tap the like and subscribe buttons for this video on our YouTube channel. Thank you. Enjoy the program.
My name is Roxanne, and I am the Southern California Region Chair, and I'll be your host today. Let's go ahead and start with the Serenity Prayer. If you'd like to come off mute and join, you're welcome to. And then once we're completed, please go back on mute to limit background noise. God,
grant me
the serenity
to
accept the
the
things I cannot
cannot
change,
change,
the courage
courage to
the
change
things
the
I
things I can,
and the wisdom to know the difference.
Thank you so
Amen.
much. Thank you for choosing to spend part of your Saturday with us and joining us for our 33rd annual SoCal Narathon. This year's theme is Embracing Today. This is our annual region, our largest and only fundraiser that we do for the year. If you'd like to make a donation, please visit our website. I have the information shared on the screen here. Actually, I should probably stop sharing so you can see me better. Our co-host Ken will also post the information in the chat, but you can visit our SoCal region website at naranonsocal.org. You can press the PayPal button and make a donation there. You may also send a check or use Venmo to our treasurer, Susan, and you can send your pledge to her at 949-872-3941. Again, that's 949-872-3941. So you can text your pledge to her, and if you'd like to mail a check or to get her Venmo information for the 7th tradition, you can text that, and then she will respond with the information. Regardless of what format you use, if you choose to make a contribution today, you'll need to make sure that you include your information. If you have your group or meeting ID number, that would be helpful. Otherwise, at least the name, date and time that your group meets, so that way we can make sure that your group gets credit for the contribution today. We really appreciate that. With that said, you might ask, where does the 7th tradition money go? Keep in mind that all of our 7 traditions, or our 7th tradition states that every group ought to be fully self-supporting, declining outside contributions. Our region's budget, as approved by our GSRs at our assembly, includes allocations for regional expenses associated with things such as Zoom fees, purchase of literature, conventions, new groups, Narateen, Narathon, outreach, PayPal fees, website platform, sending our delegates to the World Service Conference, and then 7th tradition contributions to the World Service Office. We thank you for your continued support. Next, I'd like to give a special thank you to the committee that got together to help put on today's event, with doing things such as hosting the tech support for today, speaker procurement and communications, as well as creation of our collateral for the event. I'd like to thank Dottie from our Mission Viejo group, who also serves on our outreach committee, Roseanne from Moreno Valley, who is also the SoCal region secretary, and also a member of the outreach committee. Susan from the Mission Viejo group, who is for take back meetings, minute person, and Ken from Chatsworth, who is our SoCal region Narateen chair, as well as a member of the website committee and World Service Narateen, I believe still vice chair. Trudy from Fountain Valley, who's a SoCal region alternate delegate, our finance chair, and also on several World Service committees. And then myself, I'm part of the Inland Empire Virtual Meeting Group, and I'm the chair for the region, as well as serve as a member on the outreach and website committee. So as you guys can see, most of us hold multiple positions, and we're a little overworked, and we're in need of people to step up into be of service. So we're asking you to please join us in 1 week from today. So next Saturday, the SoCal region will be putting on a service workshop called Helping Nar-Anon Help You, where we're going to talk about the service structure and how being of service can help you in your own recovery, and what our different details of the different roles are. Also, on October 14th, we will be holding our next regional assembly, which we will actually be holding our elections at that time. So if you're interested in being of service, that would be great for you to attend, and you could potentially nominate yourself for one of the roles or to join one of our committees. Please keep in mind that concept 4 states effective leadership is highly valued in Nar-Anon. Leadership qualities should be carefully considered when selecting trusted servants. If you're interested in being in a service position, you can also reach out to me at the SoCal region at naranon.org email address. Now for some quick housekeeping before we get started, all participants will remain on mute throughout the event. Please keep your movement to a minimum as not to be a distraction. If you need to move around, please just turn your camera off. You may list questions for the speakers in the chat, and then we'll call on you if time permits at the end of the speakers. We will also list the SoCal region email in the chat. If you wish to try to connect with one of the speakers post-event, you can send us that inquiry and we'll forward that on to the speaker. All right, so with that said, our first lined up speaker for today was Tara from NA. Unfortunately, she messaged us this morning and she is unable to attend as she is sick. So I am pitching in, and I will be filling in for her speaker position this morning. So please forgive me if I stumble a little because I wasn't prepared to do this, but we're going to roll with it because that's what we do here in Nar-Anon. So as I said, my name is Roxanne, and I am a grateful member of Nar-Anon. To give you a little bit of backstory on me, my husband and I have been together for about 35 years. We were high school sweethearts. We got married young, started our family young. We had 2 kids by the time I was 21. We were working parents, and we did the best we could as a young family. We weren't rich by any means, but we did okay. Our kids really didn't struggle for too much. They got what they needed, and we did the best that we could. My oldest daughter, she liked to play sports. She was popular in school. She loved to was like the social butterfly. My younger one, which was about 2 years younger than her, She was more the shy one. She liked to listen to music and just had a very small core group of friends that she connected with. And outside of that, she really had a lot of anxiety, didn't want to, do anything by herself. She didn't like to talk on the phone, even to family members and stuff, just like me, her dad, her sister, and her small group of friends. But other than that, she wouldn't even want to talk to like her aunt on the phone or anything. So very quite different personalities. I was very open with my kids about addiction and alcoholism because it ran in our family. My mom was an alcoholic and dabbled in a variety of substances. My aunt was an alcoholic and I think some prescription medications. My cousin, my sister, like we have a lot of folks in our family that were affected by some sort of addiction of some substance. And so I was pretty open with them. I actually grew up going to AA meetings with my parents. I remember being at candlelight meetings and sleeping on the couch in the back of the room while my parents were attending their meeting. Probably not the best case scenario since those were smoke-filled rooms. Probably wasn't the greatest thing for me, but you do what you got to do when you have kids. And so I hoped that my kids would not have a problem with any type of alcoholism or drug addiction growing up, having been open with them about that and them having some knowledge about it. But unfortunately, it does, having the genes in the family gives them a predisposition to potentially becoming an addict. And my older one hasn't really struggled with it. She had some issues with some alcohol a little bit there, but it didn't get crazy or anything, and she's pretty good now. But my younger one really struggled. And I think her shy personality and the severe anxiety that she exhibited ever since she was a kid really led her down that path. And I had asked her at one point, if I could have done something different to help her have not gone down that path. And one thing she told me was that that there was nothing I could have done, that she has been an addict or had an addictive personality her entire life. And part of that showed because she was the chunky one. Like my older one played in sports and she was really active and stuff. My younger daughter was chubby and was addicted to food really, starting from a very young age. And so she said, I always sought to fill that hole and to deal with my emotions through food. And so that addictive personality led into seeking out other forms of satisfaction, which started off dabbling with a little bit of alcohol and then, went into, I think smoking weed. And then at 18, she met her, the father of her kids. She met him and she was self-conscious about how she looked and stuff. He said, hey, you could do a little bit of meth and that'll help you lose some weight. So here she is, starting with that. And it really did help her lose weight. She started getting more confident and then that just kind of snowballed from there. Unfortunately, it led to a really bad relationship. They had 2 kids. He was very abusive and witnessing that was very traumatic for me because I love my kids, and as a parent, you're always wanting to be able to protect them and make sure that they don't have to suffer and go through things that we went through as adults. But making her own choices, and I didn't have control over any of that. But know that I didn't have any control at that point. So I, would try to reach out to her and stuff, but, she was going to make her own choices. She had 2 children with him. They were both addicts, and her addiction, even though, this is not about her story, it's about my story. Her addiction had a great effect on the whole family. And it caused me as a parent to have to make choices that I wished I would have never had to make. And that has things that, I'm going to have to deal with and live with my choices for the rest of my life. And unfortunately, in dealing with all of the chaos and everything, it got really bad. I had to kick her out a couple times. The last time I kicked her out, she was actively using in my home, and she lived with us with the two kids. And I told her, I can't have you actively using in my home because you have two babies, you're not watching them. The youngest one was 2 months old, or just under 2 months, and then her sister was under 2. And I was like, you're in your room getting high, and the kids are in the living room, and you're not even watching them. Like, if something happens to one of the kids, I'm as liable as you are if I know you're actively using in my home. And I just can't be a part of that anymore. And I was a horrible enabler this whole time. And this is to give context, it was about an 8-year journey with her active addiction. And so the last time I kicked her out, she had 2 babies under 2. And it just broke my heart because I didn't know what was going to be happening with my grandbabies, but I couldn't live with myself if one of them got hurt or something horrible happened to one of them when they were under my roof. And I knew it was a potential because I knew I was allowing her to use in my home. So I kicked her out, and they were going from seedy motel to motel. They were living in her truck. It just was a bad situation. And then I got a phone call from a police officer saying that my daughter was at this motel with the baby's dad and the kids, and that they needed me to come get the kids. And I was like, at that point, I was at my lowest of lows. And I was just like, my daughter's going to die from this. I don't know what else to do to try to save her. And at that point, I thought the only thing that she cherishes are her babies. So I thought, okay, well, if I don't get the kids and the kids go into the system, she'll for sure be hitting her rock bottom and she'll get clean. So I told them I couldn't get the kids. And so CPS got involved, the case was opened. Now she's going to court about trying to get her kids back. And she started an inpatient program for 30 days, started working her program and getting clean. So I could stay involved with the kids. I actually, I had tried to keep the kids originally. I got fingerprinted, got background checked, and then they stayed with me for a few weeks while I was trying to work things out. But we really weren't going to get any assistance, and I couldn't afford to not work and take on 2 babies. So another horrible thing I had to do was I had to take the kids back to CPS and leave them there. And that was like the most horrible thing. So I still get choked up talking about that. So with that, I just was like, okay, well, I had to do what I had to do to try to save my daughter. So my daughter was working the program. She was going to her meetings. I became the facilitator for her visitations. So the kids were I was still able to stay connected with them, and they were able to come and visit. And then she missed a drug test. And then she missed another drug test. And when they miss a drug test, it's counted as a dirty, because obviously if they were clean, they wouldn't have missed the drug test. So here we are 7 months into the process, and we find out my daughter is still using. So that was devastating. So now she's actively using again. By the time she got clean, she was at the end of her 18-month period with the courts to try to get her kids back. And she never got it back. They were adopted out by foster parents that had them. And it's been about almost 5 years since we've had any contact with 2 of our grandkids. So meanwhile, I really had to work on myself. I had to be able to figure out how can I get some sort of control back in my life, because it really was filled with so much chaos, and I didn't know who I was or what I wanted in life or anything, because everything was focused on my daughter, and I didn't have any type of faith. I just really was in a lost place. My relationship with my husband was not great because I was such a horrible enabler, and he really was a lot better with detaching and being removed from the situation than I was. And so my daughter, when she was in her first inpatient program, she actually had told me about Nar-Anon. I knew about Al-Anon because I'd gone to AA with my parents. So she said, you should go to Nar-Anon. That's for, families of addicts. I was like, okay. So I found a local meeting, which was in Upland at the time, which is currently our Claremont meeting. And I started attending. And I can say I'm here today because of Narathon. And I started attending meetings. My very first meeting, I shared. It was a brief share, but I shared, and I share every single meeting that I go to because it's so important to be able to speak my truth and speak my emotions. So that way I am not bottling them up, so I can stay strong in my personal recovery. I really didn't have any faith in a higher power at that point. So the group, after attending week after week, the group actually became my higher power. It helps me to start finding some sort of, little pieces of peace and serenity throughout my day. It helps me figure out how to find other ways to try to find some peace through some meditation and trying to regain control over my life and my health. I gained so much weight because I'm a stress eater. And I gained so much weight. My health was not great. And I really needed to try to rein things back in and learn about me, because I really had lost who I was, because my daughter, like I said, was my focus on everything. So my group became my higher power. And then as I worked my steps, as I attended the meetings, heard the stories, and started really going down my path and my journey with Al-Anon, it really helped me to try to figure out, what I needed to do to stop enabling and to detach with love. Well, I can say originally I did not detach with love. I detached with anger because I didn't know how to detach with love yet. And I needed to have that separation to try to be able to focus on myself. So at first it was detached with anger, and then figuring out what my boundaries needed to be, and figuring out that if I was going to set a boundary, I needed to stick to the boundary. So not to put something out there that I wasn't going to stick to, because otherwise my words meant nothing. There was no meaning behind them. And my boundaries would change, and they would get a little stronger as I went along. But I was able to help go from detaching with anger to detaching with love, and being able to now today, I can say that I love my daughter, but I don't love the addiction. I don't love the disease, but I can separate my daughter from that. Even when she's in her active addiction, I can still love her within my heart, knowing that I may not be with her. I love the reading we have in the Nar-Anon 36 of the Yellow Brick Road, and how you're walking down the yellow brick road, and then the red brick road is next to them, and sometimes you're close enough that you could be holding hands, and other times you're so far away that you may not even be able to see them. And I remember the first time I read that in a group, when I said that portion of the reading, I choked up, and I almost couldn't finish the reading because it just touched me so much that I know that sometimes I won't even be able to see her, but it's okay, because she needs to walk her journey and I need to walk mine. So the connection with my group and connecting with my higher power really helped me to start working my way through my journey with Nar-Anon. And one of the things that it talks about is being of service and giving back so freely what has been given to me. And so I really believe that my regular attendance of my meetings and sharing every time, even when I was in a good space, so many times I see folks that, they'll drop off for a long time and then they come back because their addict is now using again or something. And I really feel like it's so important for those of us that are in a good place to continue to come to the meetings, because those shares are the ones of hope. And if we only have folks coming in when they're in chaos, we don't get as much of the hope message. So it's so important to make sure that we continue to give back. So I started off being of service within my group. I was the chip person, handing out the chip. I was the host where I would bring the snacks and set up the room and clean up after the meeting. Then I became the group service representative for my group, being able to represent my group so we would have a voice in the structure of our region. In 2019, October of 19, I had moved in May, and I decided it was too much for me to continue to drive to the meeting that I was going to. So I decided to take the deep jump and opened my own meeting out in the San Bernardino area. And I thought, okay, well, that's like the drug mecca of California, right? So they could use an Nar-Anon meeting there. So I opened a meeting in downtown San Bernardino where, man, I should have had a piece on me walking into that place because it's scary at nighttime walking in San Bernardino. So I opened my own meeting. It was small. I probably had about 4 or 5 people attending at that point. And then COVID hit. And so then we ended up, after about 3 weeks, when things didn't settle down, we moved to virtual. And then now we are the Inland Empire virtual meeting group. And I've been hosting that weekly since the beginning of 2020. With that, I decided, okay, well, what else can I do to be of service? And I kind of feel like I thought about this the other day. Addicts, when they are in chaos, they're filling it with the drug of choice that they have. That's how they're calming themselves. When they're clean, they're still trying to fill that hole, and hopefully they're filling the hole with working their NA program, or if they go to church and they're filling it with their higher power or whatever. So for me, that hole was, I'm filling it with Nar-Anon, and I'm filling it with being of service, because I don't want to fall back into the habit of enabling. So I became the area service representative for the Inland Empire area. I did that for about 1.5 years. I got a little more involved with our regional Southern California region group. And then I eventually became the Southern California region chair, which I've been doing for almost 3 years now. And so I will actually be resigning my term at the end of October when we do our next elections. So that way I can, again, focus back on me. I don't want to just be of service. I want to be of service, but I want to be able to focus on my relationship with my husband and stuff. And looking back, like, our relationship really struggled over the years because of all of the issues with my daughter. I mean, in the course of her being active, she was in and out of treatment facilities about 9 times over 2 years. And she had been doing really well. And this is one of the reasons why it's so important to make sure that we stay active in our own personal recovery, because we never know when they're not going to be clean. Addiction is a lifelong disease, and it can rear its ugly head at any time. My daughter had been doing really well. She celebrated 3 years being clean in March of this year. And a month or so after that, she came clean with me that she wasn't clean, that her and her kid's dad, she has a fiance now, and they have a daughter who just turned 2. And they relapsed in January of this year. So after almost 3 years of clean time, she is not clean. So they did get clean. They have about 4 months under their belt now. But if I hadn't been strong in my personal recovery with Nar-Anon, I would have been devastated when that happened. I would have been spiraling out of control along with her. And that just would have been horrible for everybody. And fortunately, I come to my weekly meetings. I've been working on myself. I host and am responsible for my meeting each week. I do my service at the regional level. I do all of these things to stay strong in my own personal recovery. And that allowed me to be able to keep my peace and serenity, even though I knew that she wasn't clean anymore. And I thought, okay, well, this is a bump in her road. She has lots of tools in her tool belt from working her program. She's not starting from scratch. Like, she already knows these things. So hopefully she gets back on track. And she did. She didn't, she was a couple months on this run instead of years. So, but that's a real reality that we all have to live with, is that any given day our loved one could decide, something happens and they're not going to be clean anymore. So I can only encourage you all to continue to use the program and the tools that it provides to stay strong in your recovery, because that's the most important thing. Is we can't be there to help our loved ones when they need help if we're not helping ourselves. So with that, I think we have about 5 minutes left on my time slot. So if anybody has any questions, I would be happy to answer them. So, sorry.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Thank you, Roxanne.
Just a reminder, Roxanne was not meant to share this morning, but she stepped in at the last moment, so that was pretty awesome.
Powerful share, Roxanne. Thank you.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you so much.
That was a beautiful share. I actually think you were meant to share today.
Thank you. Okay, well, if there's no questions, I appreciate you guys allowing me to share my story today. With that, we can move on to our next speaker. Debbie, I see you're on, so we'll go ahead and pass it on to you if you're ready. Debbie is a fellow Nar-Anon member, and she is going to be, I'm sorry, are you NA? You're on mute still.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
Are you Nar-Anon?
Am I in Nar-Anon?
Yeah, are you Nar-Anon?
Yes, I attend the Fountain Valley meeting here.
So you can go ahead and take it away. Thank you so much for being of service today, Debbie, and sharing your story.
Thank you, Roxanne. It was a great story. Good morning. Again, my name is Debbie. And I'm so very happy to be here this morning. And I'm grateful for the opportunity to participate in this year's Narathon. And it's such a pleasure to be able to share my experience, strength, and hope with everyone here today, especially on this topic of living in the moment. When I saw what the theme for this year's Narathon was going to be, embracing today, I knew at that moment, I knew then that I wanted to talk about living in the moment. Living in the moment, for me, when I learned how to do that, actually became the key to finding that peace and serenity that I had been searching for, not only for my time in this program, but for, I think, most of my adult life. I never had that sense of peace. I never had that sense of comfort. I just always felt at odds with everything and everyone. And so when I learned how to do this living in the moment thing, it was probably the greatest gift I got from this program. I'll start and give you a little background on my journey. It began in April of 2002. with our 15-year-old son at the time, he was referred to an outpatient program for adolescents with chemical dependency issues. He was referred to that program by College Hospital, who had just released him from a 2-week hold. It was, we knew that he had been drinking. We knew that he had been using drugs. We had 2 older boys who also had been drinking and who had also, we knew about marijuana. We knew about that. But, I think like most parents, we just assumed that it was that teenage experimentation. They were just trying to find themselves. They were out there with their peers trying to use. And I don't think either one of us really understood or appreciated how much trouble our son was in, and it was so eye-opening when he had wound up at College Hospital and then they kept him. I was just stunned. I couldn't believe this was happening. And the thing that was really, really ironic about that for both my husband and I is that at that time in our life, we both had in excess of 20 years in another program. And we were pretty sure that we knew everything that you needed to know about abuse and addiction and alcoholism and drug addiction. And it was shocking to find out that we really didn't have a clue. And so here we go off to this rehab program with our son. And I think I assumed, I don't know what my husband assumed, but I thought we were just going to go there. We were going to do the orientation and we were going to drop him off. And then, he would go back and forth to whatever program they had for him. And then they would send him home and he'd be fixed and we would move on with our life. And so it was really kind of a shock when we got there and they said that insurance required that at least one parent be involved in this program with him. And my husband, who had no intention, he didn't think he didn't have a problem, so he didn't need to be in the program. They could just fix his son and send him home. And so by default, I started off in this program with my son. The second shocker came when they said that the kids were required to go to meetings, but the parents were also required to attend Al-Anon meetings. And at the time, Al-Anon was the only program that they had that I was aware of. I had, at that point, never heard of Nar-Anon. And so when they said we had to attend Al-Anon meetings, I was like, are you kidding me? What is Al-Anon going to do for me? I have my own program. I don't need this Al-Anon program. But I stayed. My husband and I eventually began to volunteer at this program. We stayed and worked with parents of the children who were there. And we attended Al-Anon meetings. I don't know why he kept attending. I attended because I wanted to be a good role model for the other families. My son struggled really hard in the beginning of this program. He didn't do well. He was so toxic that they wouldn't even allow him in some of the groups. And he wound up in an inpatient program, but eventually he began to get some really clean time. He was participating. He was making friends. He was actually doing well. And we were really pleased about that. And one night I was in group with the other parents, and the counselor said to me, your son's doing really well. He's really grasping the program. He's doing a lot of work. And I said, yeah, we're really happy about that. And he said, well, what concerns me, he said, is you don't seem to be very present for what's going on in his life. You don't seem to be here for him. And I was a little stunned by that because I was at every meeting. I was participating in everything they asked me to do. And now he's telling me that I don't appear to be present for my son. And he said that when we were in group, he said he noticed that I seemed to be focused always on what happened yesterday, or I was busy worrying about what was going to happen tomorrow, and that I didn't seem to have any presence in my life. And I'm like, I understood the words he was saying, and I got the meaning, but I really didn't know what he wanted me to do. I didn't know, what did this being present mean? And so I turned to the only thing that I knew, and that was the slogans that we all are familiar with, you know, let go and let God, one day at a time, easy does it. And when I would find myself, when I thought I was in that place where when I wasn't in the moment, I would turn to these slogans and I would say them. But they didn't bring me any comfort. They didn't make anything different. They didn't make my life any better. And so I just moved on from it. And, you know, eventually my son left that program. But my other son, we have another son who probably about 3 years later, 2005, I think, was living at home. And my husband was helping my other son look for shoes. And they went under second one's bed and they found a mushroom farm growing under there. And my husband threw it away and he invited my son to leave our home. And he did. And of course, he didn't have a job. He was in his early 20s, but he didn't have a job. He was working weekends for the swap meet. And I guess he got one of his friends to open one of the buildings over at the swap meet, and he stayed there for about a week. And like a good drug addict does, he came up with a solution to his problems that didn't involve working or making his life better. He got together with a friend who knew a kid whose father sold drugs on the side and kept a strong box full of cash in his house. And they decided they were going to break into his house and take the money because it was a drug, he was a drug dealer. The police weren't going to come to his aid. The police weren't going to help him. So this was like free money. Nobody was going to care. And so they broke into this man's house and they didn't get the money. Instead, they got arrested. And after spending probably 6 to 7 months in jail, he accepted a plea bargain that included 5 years of probation and 2 felony strikes. And it was, it's just such a hard moment. I worked for the school district at a time. I lived in the neighborhood where I worked. And it was no secret. It's no secret that your son's in prison. And here I am working with other people's children, and I have a kid in prison. And it was a really difficult time for me. But he was on probation, and I had this hope. I had this hope that he would, I researched it like a good codependent mom would do. And I found out that, if he completed his probation, he could expunge his record and he could move on with his life. And that was my hope. And I pushed him for that, and I encouraged him for that. And he had other plans for his life. He had a medical marijuana card, and the Orange County Department of Probation was not as acceptable of his marijuana card as the state of California said that they were supposed to be. The Orange County Probation Department's position was your terms of probation are break no laws, and it's against the federal laws to smoke marijuana. So you're breaking a law, and that's a violation of your probation. And so this went back and forth. And he got to the point where he had completed almost 3, maybe 3.5 years of his probation. He didn't have much longer to go. And he decided that keeping that medical marijuana card was more important than completing his probation. And so he instead said he would rather do the 3 years in prison and deal with the parole, the Department of Parole, because the state of California would be more accepting of his medical marijuana card. And so the day he left Orange County Jail and went to Vacaville was the most devastating moment in my life. I was completely shattered. And I had no ability to focus on anything. I was like a zombie. I would go to work, but I would have, little memory of what was happening there. I had no participation in anything. I was really, really angry at my husband. I felt that, if he had been a better father, my kids wouldn't be in this place. It wasn't that I was a good mother, of course I was, but he was a terrible father. He was too hard on those boys. on the other hand, he was really angry at me because he thought I was too easy on them. And it was just a nightmare time. And at one point, we were supposed to go to the 25th wedding anniversary of one of my husband's oldest and best friends. And we were both so wrapped up in everything else that was in our life that we didn't go. The people were sitting around waiting dinner for us because we were supposed to be there, and we didn't show up. And we didn't show up because we weren't where we were supposed to be in our head. We weren't participating in the moment of our life. You know, we were just caught up in this painful past and this fearful future, and that's where we lived. A couple of months later, we went to Hawaii, where our oldest son lived with his family. And at this point, my loved one, was in Vacaville, and he was calling me daily, looking for me to do things for him. Send a money order to this guy because I'm going to buy his TV, and send a money order to this guy because he's going to sell me his contraband cell phone. And I spent the entire 3 weeks I was supposed to be visiting my oldest son and his family, running all over the island of Maui, trying to send off money orders to people I didn't know so that my son could have contraband items in prison, because it would make his life better, which would make me less fearful. You know, I didn't do it for him. I did it for me because I was just so afraid of this environment that he was in. And I was in panic mode constantly. And my son, my oldest son, came to me and said, right before we left, you know, we were so looking forward to having you here, and we were so looking forward to spending time with you, but you didn't really spend any time with us. You were busy with, you know, my brother, and that's where you were. And it made me think again about what this counselor had said to me maybe 3.5 years earlier, that I wasn't present. And I realized that that was a real problem for me, that I wasn't present in my life. And by not being present in my life, I was missing out on what good things were happening. I had a brand new granddaughter, but I was so busy, you know, I was so caught up in the fear and the pain of this other kid's choices that I couldn't enjoy the time I had with my granddaughter. And so I knew I needed to do something different. So when we got back to the mainland, I went to the director of the program that we had been with my youngest son. He was a former heroin addict. He was a member of 3 different recovery programs. He worked in the Al-Anon program because he had a wife who was also an addict and an alcoholic. And so I felt very comfortable going to him. And then I also realized, you know, I had this program of Al-Anon that I had been going to. I hadn't really done anything with it. I thought I didn't think I needed it. I thought it was better than that. And so I realized at this point that I needed to swallow my pride, and I needed to get humble, and I needed to start working this program, because here were tools available to me and I wasn't using them. So I had 2 things going on now. I had this therapist who was also a member of these programs. It was like being with a sponsor on steroids. But then I went and I found someone who had worked the steps in Al-Anon. She was a woman that I knew from the program. Her son had also gone to this program. And I went to her, and it was very difficult, because you have to understand that at this time I had 25 years in recovery, and I'm going to somebody as a newcomer and saying, can you help me work these steps? And Lisa, I'm not afraid to say her name, Lisa was a godsend to me, because she understood this program. She worked it very hard, and she helped guide me through these steps, which were very foreign to me. And at the same time, I was working with the director, who reminded me that one of the problems I had was I could never be present where I was, and that I needed to start working on that, as well as working on, you know, these steps. So he gave me a challenge. He said to me, you need to figure out how to center yourself, how to start living in the present so that you can enjoy what's happening in your life, so you can be with the people who love you, so that you can participate with other people, even though you have this stuff going on. And I'm going to have to tell you, I had no idea what anybody was talking about. I didn't understand. And he said, there's three components to living in the moment. And those three components are acceptance, gratitude, and forgiveness. And his assignment to me was to understand what each of those components were. And so that's what I did. The first one I looked at was acceptance. And I have to tell you that I felt like they were asking me to accept the unacceptable. How do you find acceptance when you have a son in prison? And at this time, about the same time, the youngest one had started, using again, and now he was homeless and out on the streets. And they're telling me, "Oh, you have to acceptance. Acceptance is the answer." And I'm like, these people are crazy. I can't accept this. This is insane. So I started doing research, and in my research, I came across a definition of acceptance that really resonated with me, and it began my journey of understanding what this was about. And this definition said that true acceptance is the ability to acknowledge the reality of a situation without resistance. That made sense to me. And then I had to figure out, well, what is this resistance they're talking about? And I learned that the resistance is actually when we begin thinking negative thoughts, or we start to feel, negative attitudes. And some of the thinking that sets us off in this resistance mode is the thoughts of, I can't deal with this, or this isn't fair, or I can't believe this is happening to me. Or we begin to feel stuck and we don't think there's any solution to our problem, or that we can't change anything for the better, or we wish things were different, or we're angry at the world, or we're holding grudges. That's the resistance they're talking about. When they say that to accept the reality of a situation without resistance, those are the thought patterns and the behavior patterns and the feelings that they're talking about. We get caught in that place, right? And those feelings reinforce or intensify the emotions that are attached to these events that we're struggling with. And these events make it more difficult. These emotions make it more difficult to move forward. And so we stay trapped in this place of being stuck in pain with the past and fear of the future and no way to move forward. And so that was very enlightening for me. And that was probably one of the most helpful things I learned in the beginning of this journey. But I had to figure out now, how do I move out of these negative patterns? How do I stop this kind of thinking? How do I change it? And I realized that gratitude was going to be the answer to, that question. Gratitude for me is like a superpower. Gratitude is a way of being in your mind that helps you feel more positive emotions. It helps you relish the good experiences that are around you. It helps you learn to deal with adversity. It helps you build strong relationships. And along the way, it also improves your health. It is, I discovered, impossible to be in a state of gratitude and to be in a negative thought pattern, or to be experiencing negative emotions, or to be, unhappy. It can't be done. Believe me, I tried to find the exception to the rule, and I couldn't. And I'm grateful to this day that one of the very first assignments I was given when I actually got serious about working this program was to make a gratitude list every day. Every morning I had to start with finding 5 things I was grateful for. And again, like acceptance, where I didn't think it would be possible to accept the situation that I was facing. I couldn't find any gratitude. I can remember saying, you know, I don't have anything in my life I'm grateful for. This is ridiculous. My son's in prison. My son's homeless. I got one in Hawaii that sometimes he's sober, sometimes he's not. I have a grandchild I never get to see, and you want me to be grateful. But I had to make the list anyway. And so it started off with really, really stupid things like, I'm grateful for the sun today. I'm grateful for, that I had a good dinner. But the wonderful thing about gratitude is once you start thinking about it, once you get to that place, it becomes a life of its own. It propels you forward. And you discover every day more and more things that you're grateful for. And the more grateful you are, the happier you become. And so I still had these very, very difficult situations. I still had these very, very sad things. But with gratitude and acceptance, I was learning that it is possible to coexist with these negative events and still be in a place of happiness, or to be able to appreciate the good things that were going on around me. And that was such an amazing blessing because I hadn't experienced that in so many years. I can't stress the importance enough of gratitude and what it does, and how it helps. When we get caught in this negative thinking, what that negative thinking does is it sort of triggers your survival brain. And your survival brain, it's that very old part of our brain, is hardwired to focus more on what's wrong than on what's right. And it starts to take over it just becomes automatic. It just goes to these negative places. And so gratitude is a way to calm that survival brain. It's a way to take you out of those negative thought patterns. And it's a way to help you begin to move forward in a program of recovery and to find that peace and serenity that the program promises us in the very beginning. The third step of this journey was forgiveness. Oh my gosh. I have to tell you, I think for me that forgiveness was a very difficult place to be because I didn't know how I could forgive them. I had so much resentment over, things that had happened. And I had so much resentment that I wouldn't talk about. I just kept it buried inside, and I was just angry, and I wasn't willing to let go. It's like, well, they have to apologize first. If they apologize first, then maybe I'll move into forgiveness. I don't know. And I didn't want to let go. I didn't want to move forward. And I had to really spend a lot of time on forgiveness, and I had to really look at what forgiveness was. And I realized I had become so wrapped up in the things that were wrong that it was robbing me again of my joy in the present. And once again, we come back full circle to that being in the moment, being in the present. And being in the present means being able to appreciate and participate in those in those things that are really happening in our life. Our loved ones who are suffering with addiction, they've taken so much from us already. And now we're voluntarily giving away the good things that are happening in our life because we stay stuck in their disease with them. And forgiveness, I realized, was a necessary component. And I had to find a way to move out of my anger, and I had to find a way to move out of my hate. And I was told by someone that forgiveness is a choice. Lack of forgiveness keeps you attached to these toxic emotions, and you can make a choice to let that go. And how you can make that choice, some of the things that aid us in making that choice is putting the situation in perspective, looking at the other side of the story. And the fact of the matter is no one in my life stood up or woke up one morning and said, oh man, this is going to be a perfect day to mess with Debbie. Let's see if we can do something that's really going to upset her balance and her serenity. Nobody did that. There was no malicious intent to cause me undue emotional harm. And And when I began to look at a different perspective, I also realized that everybody that I'd had this negative experience with that I was clinging to really was, they were only acting out of their own pain and their own problems. You know, my kids they suffered from a disease. They weren't trying to hurt me. They weren't trying to do anything. They had a disease. They had a disease that brought around a compulsion to continue to do what they were doing. They couldn't stop what they were doing, but I could stop what I was doing. And when I recognized the nature of their disease, I was able to find empathy and compassion for where they were. And then I was able to find empathy and compassion for a lot of the things that came my way. You know, the arguments I get my husband, I realized some of the things that my husband did or the way he talked was because of the places he came from. You know, we all bring our broken parts with us, and we all live in those experiences every day. And it's okay to find some compassion for where they're at, and, you know, to forgive those things. And will be grateful every day for this program. You know, I started off in Al-Anon, but through Lisa, you know, I found Nar-Anon. And I went to Nar-Anon with her, and I have found the place I think where I'm supposed to be. I have found it's been, you know, I've been actively in recovery for 42 years now, and have been in a non-program for, I don't know, 19, 20 years. And it's this program that brought me to the understanding of peace and serenity, and learning compassion and empathy for the addict and the alcoholic who is still suffering. I was in that program myself. I still am in that program myself, and it did not help me find that compassion. And I will be forever grateful to this program for that, for being able to find the compassion, for being able to find the peace and serenity I was looking for. And to be able to, I can tell you today, I am fully present in my life as it exists. I don't have, I think my oldest is now celebrating his sobriety, but both boys, the middle one is back in jail again and looking at another prison term. And the youngest one is still, he suffers now from serious mental health issues as a result of his drinking and drug use. And you know, it is what it is. I no longer have to experience their suffering with them. I'm free to be sad. I'm free to offer what support I can. And I'm free to continue to live my life and enjoy the good that's happening for me, and to participate with my grandchildren. I have 4 now, and I'm able to be present with them. And with the son who is doing his best to be sober and live his life. And I no longer have to give all my attention to the squeaky wheel, as they say. I'm free to let them live their life. And so thank you so much for allowing me to share with you today and to be a part of your marathon.
Thank you, Debbie. That was amazing.
Thank you so much. Great share.
Beautiful, Debbie. Thank you so much for sharing. Do we have any questions for Debbie? We have just a couple minutes here before we move to our next speaker. I'd like to say thank you so much, talking about the forgiveness. And I know for me, part of that was working the steps and making amends. And one of the first people on the top of the list was forgiving myself for the part that I played in this, because I did the best I could with the tools I had at the time. And then making amends to my kids for the role I took and owning my piece of it. So I know without Nar-Anon, I would not have been able to do that. So thank you so much for touching base on that forgiveness. It's so important to start with ourselves first.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Right, so we will go ahead and move on to our next speaker. Thank you again, Debbie, for stepping up and being of service today.
Thank you.
Next speaker is Joel, who is our current Southern California Region Vice Chair, and he is going to be speaking on attending to intending. We'll pass it over to you, Joel.
Thanks, Roxanne. And thank you, Debbie. All right. So I'm just going to jump right in. My name is Joel, and I've been with Nar-Anon, Brea Fullerton, since 2021, but it's been impacting my life since 2018. I didn't ever intend to become part of Nar-Anon. I never intended for my parents to become part of Nar-Anon. I never came to Nar-Anon meetings with the sense of intention until about a year in. I know the idea is to come back for at least 6 meetings, but because I saw firsthand through my parents the way Nar-Anon influenced their behavior, which in turn improved my situation, marijuana usage, I came to my first meeting already bought in with the understanding that Nar-Anon can help me. It helped my parents, helped me, right? So I also knew that my parents' involvement with Nar-Anon did not stop me from smoking. So I did not join Nar-Anon seeking methods of intervention or redirection or other forms of attempted influence over any given qualifier. My parents had improved in ways that were within their domain. It was their business. I wanted to do the same with my business. I joined Nar-Anon because I came to accept my life as I was trying to live it was not something I could manage. The day of my first Nar-Anon meeting, I had just been fired from a prestigious project management position, but it felt much worse than simply losing a job. I had no peace. I had jumped into college right out of high school with an enthusiasm that led me to sinking my teeth into every class and signing up to volunteer with 4 different student media outlets, which was a lot. Because I was strengthening my journalism chops, I eventually climbed my way into being news editor of the student newspaper. I got a paid gig at the radio station. I got a paid gig as a student media admin assistant. Many other people I knew from high school, they didn't find their happy place until some 3 or 4 years in, or after graduating. But I found mine instantly. The problem is that I took my journalism so seriously, I began to find pockets of oversight, like enforcement of policies that did not exist strictly in the procedure guides or the operations manuals, because that's what I got into. I discovered my employment as student media an assistant, for example, was being paid for out of the student radio station's budget so that the admin department's money wouldn't be touched. And when I tried to get this corrected, I experienced retaliation for the first time in my life. It's kind of funny for me now saying all this, but I think my original pain, per se, I'm gonna steal that phrase, as in the first negative experience in my life that led to me feeling small, was my being retaliated against. I didn't take the retaliation sitting down, not for a second, but I did try to beat the system at its own game, which opened the door to even more retaliation. It was my first time in life being intimidated by people trying to hide the fact that they had siphoned over $20,000 of student allocated money to cover administratively imposed requirements that could be done away with. It was my first time watching meetings be run by protocol that did not exist, and transfers of power being strong-armed by administrators according to what they liked instead of according to the letter of the law. It was my first time taking my findings and sharing them with other people, other students, other paid administrators even, collectively agreeing to protest. And then when I started rolling out our battle plan, I got left planted with no backup. Looked really bad. So it's not the purpose of this Narathon talk. It's not the purpose of this talk for me to go into further detail of everything I uncovered. But basically, I was a small fish who got deep fried after unknowingly trying to upset the status quo in a misguided attempt to seek justice over $21,000 of missing budget and a brazen but thankfully failed attempt to steal intellectual property rights of volunteers. right before I jumped into the deep end of investigative journalism, I met someone who would become my girlfriend, who I would call her, I'll call her Mariana for this purpose. My first time hanging out with Mariana, she wanted to smoke weed with me. She never had before, but trusted my expertise. We ended up having an extremely fun time together. Before dropping her off at home, I asked her to go out on an actual date. From there, she was who I would escape with. I tried to handle the stress of being retaliated against by holding on to her, by finding time to spend with her. The most common date we'd have would be to go out and smoke and then go to a restaurant or to a movie theater or TV, anything that allowed us to escape, have a little space where we would giggle over dumb jokes and talk smack about people that don't like us, or I guess maybe that we don't like, right? But so Mariana was a huge part of why I normalized smoking during good times, actually. Once the retaliation started, then it got worse. I started smoking basically all the time because I felt under perpetual distress. Having what I call big boy trickery, big dog trickery, guys who have been in this for years and years, throwing it at me, paradoxical commands. One time I got yelled by a guy red in the face, my boss, ordering me to go back to my desk right at the exact moment I was to report my findings to the student media board from the student government legislative branch, whatever. Another time where I was to have a meeting with a company superior 15 minutes prior, a memo from HR goes in, to which I had to reply with my own memo. I've never written one before. This is my first actual job. I have to, basically just all my classes fell through the cracks. It was the beginning of my stunted academics. It lasted for about 3 years. And juggling all this, on 2 separate occasions, I coughed, only to find blood on my wrist and my fingers. So marijuana and my girlfriend, Mariana, were the only 2 forms of escape. They were havens in which I could lick my wounds while trying to conjure up additional motivation to keep fighting. And when I did finally fully withdraw from the newspaper and my paid positions, I held on tightly to her with the feeling of, well, if you've stayed with me the whole time, you must be who I was meant to find. I can make peace with losing everything else if I see this as the trade-off. And then, summer, and we saw each other every day. Once summer was over, she took up a new position with a laboratory at the school. We weren't able to see each other for a whole month, and she dumped me. So that was a huge slap to my face. I asked her why, and she said it's because she well, I told her, couldn't you see, I'm happy to know you're succeeding. I have no problem with not seeing you for a month, because I'm assuming you have no free time. When you have free time, that's when, and she said that she was not happy. She was not used to being able to see me every day. And she was used to seeing me every day, but could not anymore. So she was the one who could not handle the emotional turmoil. So that day was important for me because I had to accept that she was right and I was right. I spoke to where I was right. She spoke to where she was right. And that I had to take her word for it. She had the right to put down any stressor or emotional load that was not providing her any growth. But just because I could see logically she was right, my emotional conclusion was that I felt betrayed. And this was when I began I got a really bad attitude of F this, the world's a joke, because it's not just this, right? Like I lost who I thought encapsulated the little bit of goodness from a terrible period. So, no good deed goes unpunished. I fell in love with a fair weather girlfriend. I'm so stupid. I'm out here, I'm getting so worked up, I'm coughing blood, and my friends are going, whoa, that's crazy, like that's supposed to help. And but because I had my marijuana crutch, leaning on my stoner friends is actually exactly what happened. Over the next year being dumped, my sickness changed from being under distressful pressure to being adrift, disillusioned, non-committal, disenfranchised. All of them with slashes I have written down. If anyone else has seen The Graduate, I'm describing when Dustin Hoffman's character spends all day doing nothing in the pool. except for me, it wasn't a pool, it was a room full of smoke. There was one semester where I missed every single morning class after the first week for one semester. That first week of class, I learned I had a friend of mine who had an open pad, which is another way of saying home alone, starting at 7 a.m. and my first class would be at 8. So I'd go meet with this friend. We'd have what's called a wake and bake, and then I'd go to class. But the second week of school, I decided, whatever, the lecture just goes over material that's in the textbook anyways. I can just do my homework and go to the lab sessions in the afternoons. So from that second week on, my friend would say, what time you got to go? I'd say, I got my mornings wide open. So we would just do that, post up for a smoke, sink hours into video games or playing with the dog or, and the thing is, though, in a way, it felt like a new happy place. It was the next new happy place after losing the radio station and all that, getting dumped. The truth is, I also started normalizing smoking at work. I was one of the people working front desk at a dinky local 2-star hotel. An interaction at a Christmas party let me in on the reality that we were all stoners. So we started, catching each other at work. Little things like, can I borrow your stuff on my lunch break? Or, hey, on my 10-minute break, I'm going to my car, other coded messages. On top of this, quite literally around the 1-year mark after being dumped from Mariana, I got into a new relationship with a girl. I'm going to call this girl Robin. She also smoked weed, just not as frequently. On the other hand, though, she did drink more liquor and could tolerate nicotine, which I cannot. I could not, cannot. I should also mention this was a long distance relationship. I'm in Southern California, whereas she's 2 hours inland from Seattle. That's where she lived. The thing is, at this point in my life, I felt the lowest I'd ever felt, because, this girl that I got with Robin, she was someone I had been friends with for years, but as pen pals, we never really committed regular interaction time, except when it just happened to be, we both have like 2 hours to kill. Let's video chat. So we also didn't really know anything about our personal lives. But then one day, one fateful night, I was particularly wounded and feeling my wounds, I should say. And everything spilled out of me in the chat room that we shared. I just shared like, this is my crap relationship with my parents. This is what's happened to me. This is why I'm not excited to join the workforce at all. Like, what is my future? This is why I'm ready to quit school. And so I ruminated and put everything in my head into words, and she listened, and through everything, I mean, hours of stuff. And when I on the most recent thing that at the time that I talked about was, I was at the receiving end of a verbal, emotional attack by someone I had been vulnerable with it. And so upon hearing about this, Robin broke down crying and said that she's so tearful and angry because of what I was being put through, and I didn't deserve any of it. And she attached her moment of pain to my pain, even though it was not just a moment for me. And that made me feel like I was being connected to 100%, for the first time in my life ever, without judgment. And she ended by gushing her feelings for me. That she insisted everything she said. So I asked her to be my girlfriend. About 2 months later, I wrote for her a love letter in which I coined a term for what feeling she gave me, which I called watering me with tears of grief. It was my reason for committing to the long distance relationship, even long after it should have ended. The truth is, her life was kind of terrible. Her only escape was her cousin, someone that she could role play games with since they were kids. But it turned out that was also, I learned towards the end that was also a source of tension and trauma So she really did have nowhere to go. Despite all this, at first, the relationship did help me. The way she had connected with me had been the source of self-confidence that I really needed. It had allowed me, if not to make peace with everything I'd been through, at least to get unstuck. I started seeking mentorship, making serious reevaluations. I decided I had everything wrong and upside down in my life, except this, at the time, amazing, great, heavenly, angelic girlfriend who had breathed kindness between my lips like CPR. I was going to do what it would take so the rest of my life could improve itself to this new level that my life had just reaffirmed was possible. And although I did not necessarily show improvement, I did start to fight for myself again. Instead of just wanting to drop out of college, I started wanting to find ways to salvage my academic units. Instead of wanting to find a better job, I started wanting to find ways for the units I'd be salvaging to go towards something I could leverage professionally, et cetera, et cetera. Eventually, no negative element in my life appeared permanent anymore. Even though she continued to be, to me, the only positive in my life, the only clear cut, like, oh, upward. However, I kept trying to make my victories our victories. When I would succeed, I'd go to her and say, "Yay, let's watch a movie, let's celebrate, babe." Right? And soon this backfired. I became aware that I was arguably the only positive element in her life. And wanting to share my victories with her, and in wanting her to share her victories as ours, I accidentally introduced the reality where she could have no victories to share. She shared with me amazing artwork, professional grade stuff on, computer animation that she did for fun, only to reveal that she had made it with a friend who, in the week since, had dismissed the project and her as a person as trash. Not cool. She shared with me another example. She shared with me an essay she wrote that I still have the argument from, paraphrased in my head because it was masterful, only for it to be revealed in my follow-up questions that the essay had gotten a B-, not much comment from the professor. And the most sympathetic people could do nothing more than give warm smiles because they knew the kind of home Robin had to deal with, but also that there was nothing they could do about it. So, and I did not yet know that lesson, that there's nothing you can do about it. Because I took my victories straight to us as a unit, I also began to take us as a unit. So any of the negative experiences she had to go through became part of, you know what I'm saying? I chained to it. Her mom drunk driving, her stepdad instigating a fist fight with her, an ex best friend did a mean prank loading up a nicotine vape pen, which normally they have a concentration. This friend loaded up a vape pen with juice that was 10 times as concentrated. So when she hit it, it made her throw up, and ha 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 ha, so not mean stuff. And I didn't, so when she would tell me that I was her refuge, I didn't just believe her. Of course I believed her. It didn't stop there. I came to see it as my purpose, as my function, because the refuge she had given me, her tears of grief, as I had called them, had been so close to my purpose and my function that I was not shy to show my true feelings, to sink into them, and to let my own tears of grief be a source of water for her. I convinced myself that this constituted making do, and I was still as much a smokestack as ever. In fact, we incorporated it into our relationship too, where every time I would go take a smoke break, I'd also send a small 5 or 10-second check-in video saying, "Love you," and "Oh, you look pretty in the picture you sent me this morning." And I wrote for her 2 songs that I would sing her, and then I started drinking more. I romanticized it in my head as being able to drink for the both of us. Everything was for the both of us. I was so whack. I'm a little shocked at myself. I want to use the word aghast now, right now, I'm not proud how far the codependency went, but I also understand how I was going through multiple codependencies. Just one of them was to the relationship. There was one to marijuana, one to alcohol, and one to distraction. That one is also big. The phone, being a hermit, going to parties. So finally, I broke the day that she broke. Because one day Robin sent me a text message that was a suicide note telling me she couldn't handle her life anymore. The problem is and it is a problem. I had gotten texts before with wording and tone that had not been all the way as bleak, but had honestly reached 90% of the way. So I actually just took it as her having an unusually bad morning. But after about a 24-hour period of no replies and rereading the choice of words, it hit me. And my memory for the next 2.5 weeks is a blur. From emotional inability and from copious amounts of marijuana and alcohol. The only I have 3 clear memories. 2 of them are where I had a moment where the desperation and stress overwhelmed me while I was driving. I had to park, and I had what felt like a seizure, except with a lot of screaming. And then the third memory is one time that I called the local suicide watch chapter for her area and was able to navigate my questions to where I learned there had been an attempt and it was not a fatality. But then I was told that, the amount of time a person spends afterwards, they go to a psycho ward and then they don't know how long they have to spend there. So when Robin got out and reached out to me, I had already been moving on for a week. I had slowly told my closest connections, that I was single again, that what had happened with her taking her life, and also tied to it, I remember that I was going to drop out of school for good this time. I took her back right away, but with a lot of unspoken aggression and pain at what had happened. I never voiced any of it because I didn't feel right taking myself out on someone who was perpetually on the receiving end of so many other bad people doing so many other bad things. I had almost dropped out of college on 3 separate occasions, but each previous time something had clicked that would help me realize college was where I belong. What's funny is that this time, as I followed through getting the paperwork and signatures for me to drop out of school, the last professor I approached asked for me to have a discussion during his office hours to establish how and why I'd come to my conclusion. It turned out to be something I needed. When I opened up about my experiencing real-world retaliation, and when I opened up about other issues applicable to just my classmates, the people, my classmates expected us to share homework and classwork with each other or be shunned. And people who weren't shunned, the group that continued that way, cheated in ways that I saw 1 or 2 professors not disciplined. So that professor talking to me not to quit asked me why I felt other people's problems should constitute my problem, when all I will have done is generate a new problem into existence, one I do not even control. So the professor could not have known, but he was also speaking to my relationship expectations too. He told me I needed to look at things by asking myself what goes on my plate. Every time someone says, "Hey, let's do this. It's going to take this long," or "I need your help with this," it's like agreeing to put more food on my plate. So I first have to acknowledge there is no plate big enough by which to say yes to everything. And even if there was, there is no person who could then eat everything and still be healthy. So he asked me if I knew what I needed, right? Like, do I know what I need to put on my plate? And I said, no, I don't. No, I don't. Oh God, I don't. And so he asked me if I would accept his suggestion. It's okay not to know, just to trust someone to tell me. So, and I said yes. Now that I'm saying, also I should mention, I appreciated that he asked, because he was already allowing me to choose what to put on my plate, even, right? So he told me, the professor gave me the name of the academic counselor, his office, etc., telling me that since I didn't know what to do, but part of my goal would be to get my degree, The counselor was there to help me to understand what I needed to do and to get it done. The second thing I had to do was pay more attention to my food without being distracted by what other people would do. He pointed out to me if I was doing so bad academically, but part of my frustration was because I was mad at what cheaters resorted to for good academics. And then I stopped going to class, or I want to drop out. How is what I'm doing helping me? It's like resentment. Resentment is, I read somewhere, resentment is like building up poison inside, hoping it kills someone else. So I should not let my actions be compromised by the actions of other people. I can have my opinions, but they cannot get in the way. And the ways that we try to control people isn't just in trying to control their actions, but also by insisting we know who they are. He asked me if I would go so far as to say that any of my cheating classmates were bad people. I tried being clever, and I replied that I would need to know more to prove or disprove, but so far they were exhibiting the same behaviors, so I can't really answer. The professor told me he believed that he could also never know enough to be sure, but if he could never say someone was a good person or a bad person, then people are people, and everyone is a person to make good or bad choices. So, in the same way that the tears of grief had helped me dislodge, the professor's reminder to put my food on my plate helped me break out of my academic rut. 2 years later, having graduated college, almost done. Having graduated college, having supported a small club, and having led a team into a prominent student competition, I walked out of my university with an elite job offer. That was the fruit of the last 2 years of effort. However, though my personal life had improved while I was a summer intern, I reset all emotional progress due to a failed engagement. And I was once again a perpetually state of what we call faded, which is to be on marijuana. But I had the choice to make whether to take the drug test for my new job using synthetic urine, or whether to take the test knowing that I would fail it. And I would disappoint everyone and everything who had invested in my getting to such a position. So for the entire of what felt like a 2-hour drive from my home to the drug testing center, I was so conflicted by this dilemma that I put myself in, that I even started listening to church music. I looked for ones that talked about intense persecution, the search for support in the face of mind-numbing doubt, and the struggle between the desire to run and hide and the desire to be a good person. I had specific ones, and I bought the synthetic urine at a spot I knew of that was along the way. But after spending about 10 minutes in the parking lot making eye contact with myself, I did not implement it. This was what it took for me to truly live up to putting my food on my plate, since I had to surrender myself to what I knew I had coming. The day I was given my punishment was also the day I decided to join Nar-Anon and join my parents among the people who are living examples of what it means to embrace today. It wasn't until about a year ago that I finally processed emotionally that I didn't throw away a good job. I threw away living with two faces. I didn't lose. I won. And I'm on a path that I can tell is right only now that I have embarked on it. And I'll have to win the next one, because there is no such thing as a permanent win. How can there be when I was convinced I suffered permanent losses until I tried again the right way? It takes grace to admit we really have no clue. But at the same time, there are so many clues. All it takes again and again is to know the difference between the things we are meant to become, which is good food, versus the things we attend to, which is seen as a sacrifice, but is really a waste of the plate space. Nar-Anon has given me the names and terminology and phrases and slogans to identify forms of support that I've been able to use in my life since. And I'm happy for each day that each one of us is able to dislodge from the things we are stuck to, thanks to Nar-Anon and to all of us who embrace today.
Thank you so much, Joel, for sharing. Does anyone have any questions or comments for Joel?
I have one, and I'm wondering, married now, and he's graduated.
I did graduate, but no, unfortunately, I'm not married.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a question. You spoke a lot about your own drug use and about attending Nar-Anon, and I'm just kind of wondering if you could, did you ever consider attending NA? What was it like for you? As kind of, I know there's a lot of obviously people who are in kind of both categories, some type of double winner and all of that, but yeah, I'm just kind of wondering. Because it sounds like you used Nar-Anon, but it's not this kind of expected or typical, like there's an addict in my life who's someone else thing. And I can relate to the sort of slipperiness of that. So if you could speak to that a little, I appreciate it.
Yeah, I am speaking as myself, right? So I recognized NA, AA as organizations where someone has a problem that they are struggling with. And yeah, okay. Yeah, my usage qualified me, but I was in touch, I guess, with I knew that the reason I had my problem was heavily related to my relationships to other people. What kind of friends did I have and what did we like to do? What kind of people was I loyal to? And what stresses were they facing that, because of my being so loyal to them, affected me too? What stresses did I deny existence or refuse to acknowledge? There's a lot of factors, but the reason Nar-Anon has been the one to work for me definitely comes from the fact that I find strength and weakness in my connections to other people, primarily. I'm not saying that uniquely qualifies Nar-Anon, but since we are always talking about being addicted to addicts, it's the one that has worked for me.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Excellent. Thank you, Joel. Any other questions or comments? Yes, Susan?
I'd just like to say thank you for being so vulnerable and sharing your story. That's hard to do, and I really appreciate that. I love where you shared your beginning, but the ending was beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm actually kind of breathing hard. So thank you.
Yes, let's acknowledge it is not easy for some of us to speak in front of large groups of people. So we appreciate you doing that. Well, thank you again for sharing your story with us. At this point, we are scheduled to take a break till 10:45. So we have about 9 minutes here. We'll take a break. So if anyone needs to grab a cup of coffee, use the restroom, anything like that, we'll go ahead. I'll put the agenda up on the screen and we will resume our program at 10:45.
Thanks, Roxanne.
Ken, are you able to pause the recording? Excellent, thank you. Again, for those of you attending, we are recording today's event. However, we will not be sharing the video portion of this. After the event, we will be posting the audio only on our SoCal website for future reference. And if you haven't attended the previous ones, we also have those links on there if you want to go back and listen to our previous marathons as well. So with that said, I would like to introduce our next speaker, who is Danny. And he's an NA speaker, and he is going to talk about the impact this has had on his life. Thank you so much, Danny.
Hey, you guys. Hey, my name's Danny, and I'm an addict. And I got a clean date of January 2nd, 2012. And thank you so much for having me. It's always an honor and a privilege to be able to speak about recovery and kind of my story. So, yeah, this is super great. So, taking it all the way back, you know, I've taking it a little bit back. So my experience has been, I've done 10 rehabs, and I've done a lot of detoxes, and I've done thousands of meetings, and I've spent 15 years of my life in prison, you know, and my life pretty much consisted of going in and out of meetings, going in and out of rehabs, going in and out of prisons and jails over and over and over again. And one of the things that I never did before, and that'll be later on in my story, is that whenever I got clean, whenever I got sober, whenever I was just 30 days clean and sober, 60 days clean and sober, a year clean and sober, I still felt like crap, you know, and this is my past. I still felt like crap, and I didn't understand what was happening to me. I'm going to meetings, I'm sharing at meetings, I'm showing up, I'm no longer using drugs or alcohol, but something inside of me was just wrong. But the deal is, and like I said, I'll explain more of that, is that I never worked the 12 steps before either. The 12-step program. So, you know, I was just sitting around. It's just like, I've got this analogy. Before I get into my story, I've got this analogy that if I was, you know, extremely out of shape and I was tired all the time and I just didn't know what to do about it. So I would ask people, hey, what do I do about this? I don't know what to do. I got to get into shape. I'm tired all the time. And then someone makes a recommendation and tells me, hey, Danny, you know what you should do? You should join the gym. I'm like, yes, I'm going to join the gym. So I go down to the gym and I get a membership, and I show up there at the membership and I tell them I'm going to be here at 6 a.m. every single morning. I'm going to be here for an hour a day at the gym. And the first day I get there, the trainer tells me, today, Danny, we're going to do arms. We're going to do arms. And then I go, I got a lot of stuff going on right now with my mom, and so I really need to get busy with this. But don't worry, I'm going to be here for 1 hour. Don't trip. You know, I just got a lot of stuff going on. And then the next day I go to the gym, and I show up there right on time. And then the guy says, today we're going to do cardio. And then I'm like, you know, my girlfriend right now is going through a lot of stuff. I really have to contact her. You know what I mean? I mean, it's just a crazy time going on. But I'm going to be here for an hour. And every single day I would show up at the gym and I would watch everyone working out. I would listen to everyone working out, and I would sit down and shut up and watch and listen. And then after 6 months, I'm more tired than I've ever been. And I will tell you that the gym doesn't work. That's an analogy for the way that I treated the program. It's a 12-step program, and I would show up at the gym every day, and I would watch people, I would listen to people, but I wouldn't do any work. I didn't do any work, so I didn't get any results. So taking it all the way back in my story, from the beginning or early on, so I remember this feeling that I had. I was 14 years old, and I was living with my mom, and my mom is a Superior Court judge, and my father is a Laguna Beach police officer. They were very good people. I don't know what happened to me, but they were good people. And I was grounded for fighting at school. And they go, okay, Danny, you're grounded. No friends, no phone, no TV, no nothing. Don't go anywhere, but we're going to go out for the night. We'll be back in a couple hours, so make sure you're here. You kids go have fun. I'm going to be right here because I'm grounded, right? So they leave, and then I look at the clock and I go, okay, I got a couple hours to go screw around. So I go down to Newport Pier where a bunch of my friends were, and we had pimped some Boone's Farm Strawberry Hill, and we were smoking some weed, and we were getting screwed up. And I looked at my watch and I'm like, ooh, I got to get back before my folks get home. So I stagger back to the house. As I'm walking up to the house, I look and I see their car in the driveway. I didn't beat them home. And my dad, you know, he was a cop and he was, you know, it was the 80s. So he was kind of hands-on back then. Like it was not cool. So I'm like, I don't want to go in there. I do not want to go in there. I do not want to go in there. This is going to be bad. So I made this decision that I'm just never going to go home ever again. I'm going to run away. So I ran away and I went back down to the pier, and I'm getting more drinking and using and smoking weed, and it's getting late. I'm asking my friends, can I stay at your house tonight? No. Can I stay at your house tonight? No. And I'm like, what am I going to do? Everyone's going home and it's getting late and I'm out here 14 years old. But you know what? Screw it. I'll figure it out. I'll go sleep at the beach and sleep in the sand. So I staggered out to the sand by the beach and I laid down in the sand. And it was the middle of January at the beach. And I'm thinking, God, it's cold out here. But there was this other feeling that was more powerful than that. And that feeling was, at least I'm doing whatever the hell I want to do. And I don't have to listen to anyone tell me nothing. Nothing. And for me, that was freedom. For me, that was freedom. Freedom from all responsibility, freedom from anyone telling me anything, freedom. And I was drunk and I was high and I was wasted, and it gave me the courage to basically tell the whole world, screw you. And I liked that feeling. And I chased that feeling for many, many, many years. But there were times where, you know, I was 20 years old and I'm in this garage and I'm working on this bicycle for like 11 days and I'm dirty and I'm grimy and my life is crap. And then I could hear this voice in the back of my head, and it's my mom's voice. And the voice is saying, Danny, you are so smart. You are so intelligent. You could be anything that you want to be. Can't you see that stuff is ruining your life? Can't you see that stuff is ruining your life? And I would think, and I thought in that moment, and I'm like, she's right. This is ruining my life. I need to get clean. I need to get sober. So back then I had to call a treatment center every day until I got in. Back then I'd call the treatment center every single day until I got in. I'd call the rock center and I'd got into the rock center, and finally they got a bed for me and I showed up there and I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I tell myself, I get there, I'm like, I'm willing to do whatever it takes. I don't want to feel this way anymore. Whatever you guys need me to do, I'm going to be amazing. I promise. I'm going to be amazing. I promise. And then I got into the rock center and they told me that I have to get a sponsor. I have to make my bed every day. I got to do a chore. I got to hang up my cup, and I got to go to these groups and talk about my feelings. And I'm like, whatever you need me to do, whatever you need me to do, I swear I'm going to do this. And then 2 weeks later, I'm holding hands with a bunch of weirdos in a prayer circle. I don't feel amazing. I think I overreacted. You know, I got to figure something else out. So I'd go back out there again and again and again. Because, you know, the weird thing is surrender. It took me years before I could surrender, because I didn't know. I could never surrender because I always thought I was smart. I was intelligent. I knew stuff and I could figure this thing out on my own. I always thought that I'm going to be able to figure stuff out, and I could never admit that I will never figure it out, that I needed help because I didn't want help. You know, I got this one analogy, another one, what my life was like. So the analogy is, my whole entire life, I spent it in this dark cave. And I'm in this dark cave, and it's cold, and it's lonely, and it's fearful, and it's uncertain, and all I have is these two rocks. And I'm banging these rocks inside this cave, and every once in a while I'll get a little spark, I'll get a little fire, and I'll feel good. Yeah, that's great. I feel over. And then the fire goes out. And I'm like, ah. So I'm banging rocks in the cave, banging them, get a little fire, get a little warmth. It's so bright right now. And the fire would go out. Meanwhile, people that care about me, people that love me, are walking by the mouth of the cave, and they're looking in, and they're like, Danny, what are you doing in there? There's a whole abundant giant life out here full of love and happiness and fellowship and mountains to climb and kayaks and rivers. And there is so much opportunity. What are you doing in there? Get out of there. I'm going to go back to doing this. I'm banging rocks in there. And then one time I got so frustrated and I got so irritated. I'm banging my freaking rocks. I'm getting no joy out of any of this stuff. And so I put them down. I'm like, hey, how do I get out of here? And they told me, take these 12 steps. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm looking back at my little fireplace. We had a lot of good times, man. I can remember we had good times. I'm going back. And I go back to banging my rocks in the freaking cave because I thought they were all full of crap. I didn't know there was all this freaking amazing stuff out there. So I go back to banging my freaking rocks. This last time, I'm banging these rocks in the cave, trying to get a freaking spark, trying to get a fire, beaten, exhausted. How do I get out of here? How do I get out of here from this pain, this emotional pain, and this misery, and this fear, and this regret, and this irritation? How do I get out of here? Take these 12 steps. 1, 2, 3. And I'm thinking again, this is crap. There's nothing amazing out there. This is bull crap. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And it's getting warmer, and it's getting brighter, and something as weird is happening. 10, 11, 12 outside the mouth of the cave, down in the freaking valley. And then I look around and I see rainbows and butterflies and kayaks and swimming and love and joy and happiness and freedom. And what is all this? Why did you tell me about this before? They've been telling me for years. And now, when I look back on that mountain, you know what I see? Thousands and thousands of caves, thousands of people trapped in the bondage of self, thousands of people freaking lost, confused, living in darkness and turmoil. And you know what I want to do? Free them all, every single one of them, because I know that we have options today. You know, if you guys can't tell, I'm super passionate about this. Because today I live in a way that I didn't know that I could feel this way, stone cold, clean, and sober. I didn't know I could be like this. I had no idea, because I've been in the program for years, but never working the programs, and it was always just wrong. I never worked a program. And a little bit more about me is today I'm a counselor, I'm an interventionist, I'm a business owner. I started a foundation in 2017 where we've helped hundreds of people come off the streets. You know, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a yoga instructor. I'm a million different things today. And I love life. And the main thing I am today, I am a servant. I am a servant today. I'm here to serve. I'm here to, because it turns out the only way to become valuable is by adding value to other people's lives. And I found out that if I'm not useful to people, I'm useless. Selfishness and self-centeredness is the root of my problems. Me tripping on myself and my needs and my wants and what's wrong with me, and just lost in here, just tripping. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. I don't like that. For me tripping on myself, that adds no value to anybody's life. And I did that my whole life because I thought it was all about me. You know, I read this letter from King George III. This is a while back, and he wrote this letter to one of the towns, historical fiction, but he wrote this letter, and it was to one of the townspeople, and he signs it at the bottom of the letter, "Your humble servant, King George III." And I thought about that. I'm like, your humble servant? You're a king. Why would you sign it, your humble servant? Is that just something nice to say? You have a castle, you have an army, you have riches, you have a fleet of ships, you have a country. Why would you sign it, your humble servant? But I thought about that deeply. And if you think about all the greatest leaders that have ever gone down in history, the greatest kings and queens and leaders on the planet and ever in history, they all have one thing in common that made them great. They serve the people. They put the welfare of the people ahead of their own. They serve the people. A leader that serves himself, by himself, for himself, with himself, and trips on himself all freaking day long. What's wrong with me? What do I need? Is a tyrant. I was a tyrant my entire life. I wanted you to serve me. I wanted you to give me what I thought I needed, but I wasn't given nothing back but pain and misery. You know, how much time do I got? Another 18 minutes? Great. So, here's this weird thing too, is that I could never see anything before. I could never see anything. Like I had blinders on my eyes. I could never see. It's like prison's part of my story, and I'll share that with you a little bit about my mentality. But when I was in prison, because I've been through a lot of hard stuff in there, okay? So when I'm in prison, I think I'm this tough guy, and I'm the toughest guy on the freaking yard, and I'm making sure, people are towing the line, and I'm making sure I get my respect, and I'm telling my cellie in my cell, and I'm going, hey, check this out. This is about respect and disrespect. We don't let no one disrespect us. And he's like, yeah. No one disrespects us. And I'm like, we don't let anyone talk crap to us because we'll get busy. And he's like, yeah. And I'm like, and then I proceed to go in a 20-minute narrative after all these books I've read about the meaning of life or the problems with life. And here's the deal. Like, I know the meaning of life. Like, I know the problems with life. I'm a man, I'm in my underwear, and I'm waiting for them to open my cell so I can go to chow. I don't know the meaning of life, but I think I do. Pride is my greatest character defect. Pride says I think I should know all this stuff. I got all this intelligent answers in my head. And I heard this thing the other day that was crazy. Intelligence is just a bunch of words that cover up our ignorance. Smart. I don't know very much. I know how to go from where I was to where I am now. I know that. And it was not me in my program. It was me working the program, not my program, the program. Because my program didn't work. So, when I was in prison, or I'm in prison and I'm going to call my mom. In prison, I'm going to call my mom on the prison yard. And I think I'm this tough soldier, convict guy. And I'm calling my mom. Hey, Mom, did you get that package list I sent you? I'm going to the store next week. Can you put some money on my books? I love you. Because I'm a man with nothing. I'm a man with nothing. And I calling my mommy to please give me some money as a 35-year-old man. See, I had this thing in my head that was so screwed up that I thought that if you loved me, you would give me stuff. You would provide for me. You would solve my problems. And when you stop doing that, I hate you. You don't love me. When you stop solving my problems, I would think, because my mom sometimes would not put money on my books, would not send me a package, and I resented her. And here's the truth. It's not like I was a man with nothing one time. And I was like, that sucks so bad. I never want to do that ever again. No, I was a man with nothing at 18, at 20, at 25, at 30, at 35, at 40, at 42. I was a man with nothing over and over again. And there were times when I had stuff. I had an apartment, a car, and a motorcycle, and a job, and this, and I was miserable. So I might as well had nothing. I was miserable over and over and over again. So this last time, you know, I thought school was going to be my solution. I did an 8-year term in prison, and I got out, and I thought I was going to go to school. School was going to be my solution. So I took 19 units some semesters, and I focused everything, every fiber of my being into school. But I never dealt with my disease of addiction, of being addicted to the negative, being addicted to my fears, being addicted to my frustrations, being addicted to my self-righteousness. I didn't deal with my addiction. So because I didn't deal with my addiction, I kept being compelled to freaking wind up drinking and using and screwing everything off and making my life a living hell. But I tried to go to school, so I wound up screwing all that off, and I went back to prison for 3 more years. I got out of prison this last time, and I was 42 years old, and I was on the bus. And I'm thinking, and I called my mom from the bus. Hey, Mom, I just got out. You know, I'm on my way home. I'll be there in a couple hours. I can't wait to see you. I love you so much. Woo, I'm never going to go back to prison ever again. I've learned, oh my gosh, I have some jobs lined up. I'm going to go back to school, and I miss you so much. And I can't wait to see you and Kayleen. That's my daughter. I can't wait to see you guys. It's going to be great. I'm excited. And my mom says, Danny, I'm glad you called. I'm glad you're out of prison. I have cancer. I'm going to die, and you will never set foot in this house ever again. You have made 1 million promises, and you've never kept one. You're going to die from a heroin overdose, or you're going to do something stupid and go to prison for the rest of your life. I have watched you your entire life. Not that I don't love you, but something bad's going to happen to you. And I don't want you around the family when that day comes. Take care of yourself. Still gets me. That did not stop me. I wound up 7 days later. I'm in a weird house with a weird homeboy, and I'm plotting crimes, and I'm shooting heroin, and I'm smoking speed, and I'm drinking, and I'm laughing, and I'm going crazy out of my mind. I'm like, who are we going to rob? Who are we going to steal from? Where are we going to get some money? We need to get some more money so we can do this. You know, just crazy. And then I look over in the corner of the room, and you know what's in that corner of the room? A black trash bag. And you know what's in that black trash bag? Everything I owned. 2 pairs of pants that my mom bought me when I was in prison, some deodorant, some toothpaste, and that my sister got me from a package, and all these letters that I'd written all these people telling them about how I was going to be amazing when I got out of prison and how it was going to be different. And here I am acting and behaving the exact same way when I was 15 years old. I was the same person trying to have a freaking good time, and something was wrong. I thought I was smart. I thought I was intelligent. And here I am destroying my life based upon my feelings. So I found out some friends of mine were at this place called Woodglen. And through a series of events, higher power, God, I wound up going to this detox. And I was in this detox and I was hating life. And I'm like, this is whatever. Like, I don't know. And I was in this detox, and then I went to the program. And I'm in the program, and I heard this magical thing that I have heard 1,000 times. But this time I heard it. This guy on this panel says, you know, the program's not just freaking stop drinking and stop using, and now you're going to be amazing. The program's at 12 steps. And I thought, I've been to thousands of 12-step meetings. I've been to all these 12-step programs. I've been to CA, NA, AA, CMA. I've been to all these 12-step things, but I have never done the 12-step. So I made this inner commitment that no matter what I think and no matter what I feel, you know what, I'm going to do these 12 steps. I'm going to do these 12 steps. And if they don't freaking work, I'm going to go out and shoot dope for the rest of my freaking life. Because I tried everything. So I got this sponsor, and the sponsor is like, you know, we go over step one. Okay, I get it. I'm powerless. My power, black trash bag. That's what I get with my power. I get it. You know, in my power, fear, frustration, anger, tripping, insecurities, doubt, shame, all this stuff. That's my power. You know what I mean? I'm making a miserable life with my power. I get it. And my life's unmanageable. Duh. Way unmanageable. Step two, came to believe in a power greater than yourself can restore you to sanity. All I got out of that step was my power, black trash bag, failure, pain, and misery. If I want more than that, I'm going to have to get another power. Check. Got it. Okay, I agree. It was an agreement. I didn't have a concept of higher power. Step three, made a decision to turn my will and my life over to the care of God as we understand him. So I called my sponsor, and I'm like, okay, we're on step three. And he goes, okay, did you write down the third step prayer 5 times? Yes. Did you memorize it? Yes. Easy. Yes. So he comes and he picks me up in his truck, and I get in the cab of his truck and we go to Burger King. And we're in the Burger King parking lot, and he bought me a burger, and he bought me a pack of smokes, and we're sitting there, and he goes, okay, Danny, now say the third step prayer with me. And he reaches over and he grabs my hand in the cab of his truck like this. Interlocking fingers. And then we say this prayer together, take my will, take my life. You know, we say the third step prayer. He lets go of my hand, and he looks at me and he smiles. And he goes, now, I don't want you to go a day without hitting your knees and saying that third step prayer every day. And then in that moment, I balked. I was like, yeah. I go, here's the deal. I go, the deal is this. I go, look, and I appreciate you taking your time out of your day. I appreciate the burger. I appreciate the smokes. You know what I mean? Thank you. And but here's the deal. I don't believe in God. I do not believe in God. Nope, don't. I've read so many things about so many different religions, and there is no magic man upstairs listening to all of our prayers going, I got good stuff for you, and I don't got nothing for you. I don't believe it. And then I told him, let's do the reading, let's do the writing, and I'm down to do that. But the prayer, yeah, I'm good on that. I'm probably not going to do that, and because I don't believe. So he told me, you know, Danny, he asked me some questions. He goes, where's your happy family, Danny? They don't want nothing to do with me. Do you have a home? Like your home. Do you have a home? I'm at that rehab. You have a job? You have a career? You have 401k? Life insurance? Then he said, where's your key to any lock? So just maybe the solution to your life is being presented to you right now, but you can't see it because you're so full of your own ideas, which get you nothing but failure. And he also said, when you asked me to sponsor you, I asked you, you're willing to go to any length to find victory over this thing. You said yes. Were you lying to me? And right then, that epiphany, this weird thing went on in my head, this weird lineup. And the thing that went off in my head was my mom telling me, you've made 1 million promises and you've never kept one. And this man is asking me to keep a promise. I was bright enough to know that if I can't keep my word to somebody in this life, I will always be a failure. So I told him, all right, I'll get the knees thing. All right, whatever, I'll do it. You know what prayer is like? Prayer is like if I got this giant bowl of M&Ms and I got 10,000 M&Ms in this bowl and I take one out. Do you notice a difference? No. If I take one more M&M out of that bowl, do you notice a difference? No. That's why we stop praying. That's why we don't believe, because we don't notice a difference. But day after day up on my knees, saying this third step prayer to a God I didn't freaking believe in, feeling weird, feeling embarrassed, feeling uncomfortable, not wanting anyone to see me do this stuff. You know, I would have to wait for my 4 roommates to leave the room so I could say it, like, say the third step prayer really fast and then get up and go, okay, I did it. You know? But day after day, one more M&M was coming out of this bowl. And then my third step, and then my fourth step, my fifth step, handfuls of M&Ms were coming out of this bowl. Handfuls, my 6th step, 7th step, 8th step, 9th step, 10th step, more and more M&Ms were coming out of this bowl. And something started happening to me. I started feeling braver. I started feeling more confident. I wasn't tripping on things that I always tripped on. I wasn't tripping on my family. I wasn't tripping on anything. I started caring about people in a way that I never have before. Like I started caring about myself in a way that I never have before. You know who I am today? The man I've always wanted to be. This guy. I don't feel superior to anybody, and I don't feel inferior to anybody. I'm exactly who I've always wanted to be. I'm not perfect. I got fears and insecurities and problems and frustrations and doubts, but I accept them all today. Everything in my life, nothing has happened in my life by mistake. I have a freedom that I have never known was even possible. Do I believe in God today? I can't take credit for something I've never been able to do. Do I know what God is? Nope. The teacup of my mind cannot comprehend the ocean that is God. But I know that I can fill it up a little bit. My mom today is cancer-free, and I'm welcome in her house at any freaking time. I have a key to her house. She trusts me. She counts on me. She confides in me. We're like the best it's ever been. Like, I love her so much. It is the best. And my daughter, too. I just help my daughter in her church. She can trust me, believe in me, count on me. I'm there for my whole family. You know, it's freaking amazing. That bowl of M&Ms, you know what that was? Fear, anger, hate, shame, regret, confusion, boredom, fatigue, disappointment. All of these things that happened in my life, I held on to all of them. And it was this black crap that was inside of me, choking the freaking life out of me. And I had to drink and use, or I would just complain about everything and everybody. I couldn't stop because that's the way I saw life. And you couldn't tell me it was any different. I was filled with all this crap in me, and I did not know that there was a way to release it. But the release came little by little. The psychic change, the spiritual awakening, I like to think of it as a 60-foot dimmer switch in a dark room. And it is big. But day after day, it gets a little bit brighter, and a little bit brighter, and a little bit brighter, and a little bit brighter. And then it starts getting brighter than I've ever freaking known it, to where I can see my life. I can see who I am. I can see the people. I can see where I can add value. I do not drink, and I don't not use, because if I do, it's going to ruin my life. I don't drink and use because nothing's going to make me feel better than the way I feel right now, sitting here talking to you. I am so extremely grateful for my life and this program. But I know that if I stop working this program, it will go away. That window will close. I'm a servant today, and God's will is to help his people. What is God? I believe that God is love. The more that we pray, the more that we meditate on God, our higher power, the more loving we become. And it was dark in the beginning, but I kept doing it every day, and it got stronger, and I became more loving, kind, compassionate to myself and the world around me. It is a beautiful program, the 12 Steps of Recovery. It is beautiful. We can change, we can transform, we can go from confusion and pain and misery and self-pity and all this stuff into people that are noble and strong and brave and courageous. I see it every day in all the recovery programs. I see it every day. It still blows me away. And when I have had a hand in helping somebody to get there, and I watch them get their families back, have jobs, add value, help others. And when I see that happen, and they're with their family and they're laughing, having a good time, I don't know who's happier, me or them. I don't know. Because today I get to share in people's victories, and it's the freaking best. I get to share in people's victories, where before I didn't care about people winning. I was very jealous and envious. I didn't care. Today, the secret of life is love, man. The more love that you give, the more love that you become. The more hate and jealousy and despair that you give, the more despairing your life becomes. I found that out. So I choose love. I choose love, I just to give as much as I possibly can. The secret to life is giving. It is better to give than it is to receive. And that is the truth. Anyway, you guys, I think my time's out. Okay. Hey, thank you so much. I am so honored to be here. I'm so glad we're all here right now together sharing this experience. And even if it's on Zoom, we're still, all of our hearts and all of our minds are here together. And each one of us is helping each other. And that is so beautiful. No one of us is as strong as all of us. Have a blessed day. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danny. You're
Amazing. Thank you so much, Danny.
We really appreciate you coming and speaking today. I know personally I loved all of the analogies and how we all are seeking that beautiful outside world. And the 12 steps is our path to that. And it can help us in any aspect of our life, not just dealing with our addicts. That being of service is bringing value to other people's lives. So I really appreciate that. And I love that, I don't know if you meant this by your screen name, but Standing United with NA and Nar-Anon working in cooperation with each other to be able to put on events like today, to be able to see the perspective of the addict, to see the perspective for the addicts, to be able to see the perspective of the family members, and then for the double winners to come and speak about seeing both sides of it and living both sides of it. So I really, really appreciate you speaking and everyone else speaking today. Are there any questions?
Yes, I have something to say. Thank you, Danny. About 8 years ago when I started in Nar-Anon, my daughter was just out of rehab. And I wasn't really sure what I was doing, but somebody in my group, family group, went to the first Narathon that I had heard about. And she came back with some recordings, and she gave me a recording, and she said, one of the ones that really impressed me was this guy talking about being in a cave. Bingo, you're the caveman.
I'm the cave guy. I got the cave analogy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what's really wonderful about that, because I wasn't really to that place where I could trust my daughter, or, I was still trying to tell her how to do things. And so I was telling her, it seems like you're volunteering for an awful lot of service, honey. Maybe you're overextending yourself. And she looked at me and she goes, Mom, being of service is keeping me clean and sober. And I thought, what a lesson. from the mouth of babes. My daughter's 55, right? But I thought, she's teaching me something today that I didn't know. And that's when I started being of service in my family group and in the region, because it was a secret that I didn't know. And it came from an addict. So in recovery. So I just want to thank you again. Your messages never bores me. And I thank you a lot for sharing your story today. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Danny. And with that said, I'm going to move along to our next speaker so we stay on time. So next, we're going to be hearing from one or two Narateen speakers. So I'm going to pass it over to Ken, who is our Narateen chair for the Southern California region. Thank you for your service, and I'll pass it to you.
Thank you so much. And I'm just so thrilled. We have sort of a Narateen posse going on right now. We have 2 teenagers and we have several adult facilitators from various places in the world. I want to, if you see Karen, PNW, she's actually the World Service Narateen chair. So I'm thrilled that you're here. I'm the vice chair on the World Service Narateen Committee, as well as the chair of Southern California. We also have Doris, who is our recent chair, and Dennis, who is also an adult facilitator. Doris and Dennis are both adult facilitators in Ontario, Canada, not California, Ontario, Canada. And they've helped us bring a couple of teenagers in today that are going to speak about Narateen and what the program means to them. I'm just going to share very briefly in my own experience. I started out in the wonderful world of addiction at the age of 10. Is when it first came into my life, when I discovered my 13-year-old brother was using. And my entire adolescence, my entire teenage life got thrown into a whirling dervish, and our family fell apart. It was not, we did not think we were the family that would ever experience something like that. It was traumatic. I grew up in New York City, and at that time, way back in the early 80s, there was no such thing as a Narateen. There was really no such thing as support groups for family members of addicts. And if you talk to my mom today, she will tell you that I had a terrific teenagehood. She will tell you that the problem was my brother suffered, because he did as an addict. But many adults don't understand the teens involved, whether it's their sibling, whether it's their parent, whether it's a boyfriend or a girlfriend. Addiction strikes all family members. And often the younger you are, the more disenfranchised you feel, the more helpless you feel, because there often is no support. And there really is no support quite as comforting as the support of peer groups, of people your own age. I know that when I went through it, I thought I was the only one. I thought we were the only family that had the police coming to their house, that had a brother in jail. At 18, I buried him. He was 21 when he passed away. And after that happened, I spent many, many years being a magnet to other addicts and alcoholics. What I became probably famous for is, if you look in Webster's dictionary under the term codependent, my picture's there. That's what happened to me. Is I spent a lifetime trying to save people, really trying to save my brother by saving other people, and it never worked. And the trauma and the anxiety of having addicts and alcoholics in my life became so overwhelming that when my younger brother also became an addict in his late 30s, I couldn't deal with it anymore. And that's how I found myself in Nar-Anon. I also am a foster parent, and I can tell you that we've had many children in and out of our home, and the vast majority of those children that end up in foster care are kids who end up because of the addiction of someone else. It's a family member who creates either violence or neglect or abuse, and the Department of Child and Family Services has to take them away, and they are helpless and they need people to talk to. And that's why I'm so involved in Narateen, because it helps me with my recovery. and it helps me remember where I started and how much better off I am now that Nar-Anon is in my life. So I'm going to turn this over now to our first teenager. Caroline, thank you so much for being here. We're very much looking forward to your share.
Hi there. I'm Caroline. The addict in my life currently is my dad. And what brought me to Narateen was definitely a full it was a lot it was a lot of little things all the time that just kind of built up to the point where nobody in my life, nobody in my dad's life could take it anymore, and I certainly just couldn't either. So, I finally got here, but the first when I was first my parents are divorced, so I believe that's when a lot of things started going downhill, even though it was a very long time ago. Maybe wow, 10 years ago now. Um, it was 10 years ago, and then me, my sister, and my brother um had to do week on, week off with my mother and my dad, and so things were fine. They weren't completely fine, but it was just kind of your average divorced household where people are confused and things get lost, and it was normal. It was a normal divorce environment is how I would describe it. And then fast forward to right in the middle of 2020, right maybe before March, so before everything went down exactly, but yeah, right before is when I got home from school one day, and my dad had dropped me off, and then every day he would drop me off and then he'd go work, and that's what he did. And those were my days, those were my weeks with him. Was he'd drop me off in our small house and then just leave and go work, and it was just an average day for me. And then I was getting on the couch and I found a small baggie of what I 100% knew was definitely cocaine. There was no doubt in my mind about it, which was probably the worst feeling I think I had felt. And even though it was, probably, yeah, definitely 3 years ago now, it was still just such an awful wave of emotion. But I didn't want to deal with the thought process of that right then. So what I did was I just sent a photo of it to my dad, and he immediately called me and told me that it was a friend's. He had a party the week I wasn't here. Somebody must have left it there. It'll never happen again. And he's so sorry. And I believed him instantly, and not for the sake of he's an honest person who I trust, but for the sake of I really don't want to believe that that was his. I just wanted to continue living there. I wanted to continue living that life, I guess. But that life wasn't necessarily what I needed. My dad was definitely not a dad. Right before March of 2020, I remember that the past couple years I've been living with him, when I finally, you know, had my brain slightly developed to the point where I could understand patterns and I could um understand things completely. I would go to my mom's house, which I thought of as the place where I had to work and do my chores and sit down for dinner at this table, and I could only use my phone sometimes. And then when I got to my dad's house, I could do whatever I want. I got dropped off at the house. I could eat what I wanted. I could sit down. I could like play any game or watch anything, and it was honestly it was pretty nice if you didn't think about it too hard, because when living with my dad, it wasn't living with my dad. It was just living with this guy who kind of paid rent, and I made him dinner sometimes. But it was just kind of living with this roommate where we sleep in the same house, and sometimes he drives me to school and picks me up, and sometimes he pays for the cab that takes me to school and takes me back from school. But it was something that I was just like, wow, this is awesome. This is probably what most divorced kids like experience. We get the better cut of the deal. I was so um confused, and I remember after a while it kind of got tiring, and right before I would go to my dad's house from my mom's house, um there would always be this huge lump in my stomach where I just dreaded going there because I knew it was never clean. I would clean everything. I would always cook for him, but I just knew that it wasn't going to be an environment where I was exactly the happiest or the most encouraged to do things that would help me mentally and in most cases. And then when I got there, I was like, well, I'm back in the routine. And then when I had to leave, I didn't want to leave, but that still didn't stop the absolute dread I felt every time we drove to my dad's house. The the horrible it felt like there was a giant rock in my stomach that was just like wanting to it was just weighing me down. I did not want to be there. And then after the baggy incident, after he blamed it on somebody from a party, I think maybe a year passed where I was just living like that. I think we moved to weekends and weekdays now because my dad was working so much that he just couldn't take care of me on the weekdays. So on the weekends, I would go to his house on Friday, and one Friday found I went inside and I found him sprawled out, just like on the couch, knocked out. And my first thought, which was not something anybody should ever think of their father, is he might be dead, because I didn't fully understand. I he was an avid smoker. He would smoke all the time, and so I would always he was addicted to tobacco. I guess that was the only addiction I thought he ever had, and so I used to think that it would just take him away in the night. Or every night I would worry about him so much, and what if he dies in his sleep from, I don't know, smoking? I didn't fully understand it. But when I saw him passed out on the couch, that wasn't even the worst part of it. I saw him passed out on the couch. I tried waking him up. He wouldn't wake up. So I went to the kitchen, and I saw there was coke all over the kitchen island. And it was not easy for me to see, because that just meant that I couldn't ignore it anymore. I could not. There was no way. There was no way of me avoiding the drug problem. And then there was two things on my mind. There's my dad, who I cannot wake up, who's uh, presumably dead on my couch, and there is the kitchen island that is covered in coke, and there's so much of it. It's covering like some school papers and things that I needed for the next week, and it was really scary. And so I remember coming out from the kitchen island, and freaking out and trying to shake him awake and shaking, and he finally woke up, and that was an unexplainable sense of relief that I felt. It it was insane, and that day he made me leave the house. He gave me $20 to go, do whatever I wanted. We lived next to a comic book shop. I could just go there and spend money. We lived next to a convenience store. I could go there and get a slush, but he told me to leave. He gave me $20, and he said to come back in 10 minutes. And so that's exactly what I did. I left for it was definitely more than 10 minutes before he texted me to come back to the house. But I eventually did. It was all cleaned up, and he sat me down, and he told me how sorry he was and how upset that I ever had to see that. And that's when I was like, wow, maybe I do have a dad who cares and is ready to um be a father and do fatherly things and make dinner and do lunch. And then he made me promise not to tell anybody, and that he's gonna get clean super soon. I can never tell anybody, because he's gonna get better and things are gonna get better, and we're gonna move out of this small house, and we're gonna be normal. And this was when one of my siblings had moved out already, and the other had just left. So I didn't know what to do, and it was those weeks following it when I realized that a day later, when the cycle was the exact same, that's when I knew that it's just going to continue. And so it was in my mind so much, and that week was awful, because I was just at my mom's house, just waiting to go back. And eventually, right before I had to go to his house for the weekend, I called my brother, and starting the call, I made him promise to never tell anybody what I was about to tell him, and then I told him what happened. And I think that if I hadn't told my brother something really awful, I probably would have done something um pretty terrible. I don't like thinking about it, but I don't like that plaguing my mind, because it hasn't happened. I told my brother everything's fine. Not everything's fine, but nothing happened. So it was I told my brother, I told him what happened, and he told me he wouldn't tell anybody, and he didn't. And I don't. It was good of him to do, because I don't know. I feel like I asked him not to. He said he wouldn't, and he didn't, and it was pretty good, but nothing changed. The only thing that changed was now my brother also knew about my dad's addiction. So the weekends went by, and things just kept going, and suddenly I was back on. It wasn't a week on, week off. It was, I would spend 1 week with him a month, and then the rest of the month he was just, he was just working. That's all he would do, is work. And sorry, I'm not going over time here. Uh, sorry. um, the weekends, the weeks that I would have with him, he just, that's when, a couple weekends before I decided to join Narateen, that was just like the week of probably the worst week of maybe he would just sleep all day. That's all he would do. He would sleep. He would order food for me to eat so I wouldn't have to cook. And he would order cabs so he wouldn't have to drive me from school and back from school. And those were the 1 week that was my 1 week with him every month, was just living in this house with this person who was unconscious most of the time, working the other part of the time. And most of our communication the week that I was living with him was over the phone, which is not ideal. I didn't feel like that was how it should have been. And suddenly, uh, he wanted me to start seeing him more, and he wanted me to start meeting his new girlfriend that he brought over. And his girlfriend was this super young, emotionally immature. She was maybe 26. My dad was probably double her age and some. And I remember he left me alone with her, and she was so her skin was so dry, and there was something to it that I didn't exactly know what it was, but um it was mostly it was most definitely addiction that left her in this state. But he left me alone with her, and she would just cry to me about all the terrible things that my dad would do. Nothing abusive. She would just show me these messages that she found of my dad with other girls. And this was when I was only seeing my dad once a month, but she would constantly show me these messages. And one day I could not take it, and she told me that he got really aggressive with her and broke her property and threw it outside. And that is when I finally decided to call my mom. And they picked me up. They talked with her and my dad, who after leaving me alone with her, got back after I left. And that's when my mom finally decided to be like, well, I was not doing okay. After that, I was not doing well. I was well on the outside. I think I was presenting myself as okay. I went to school, and I was still eating normally, and I was still doing everything I was expected to do, but it was not good mentally for me just to know that I had not talked to my dad in a while after that incident. And I was thinking maybe I will never talk to him again. Maybe he's dead, because I knew that she was using, and maybe something happened there. But oh, sorry. Oh my god. Uh, I have notes. I promise I have notes. I'm just trying to scramble the right ways to uh, put all my thoughts together. But that's when my mom decided to request Narateen for me, which I did not think was a good idea, because on the outside I was doing all right. I was keeping up with my grades. I was on the honor roll. I was still doing great. I still had friends. I would still see all of my friends. So I felt like I just didn't need it, because if on the outside I'm doing okay, then I'll be fine. I'm still surviving. I'm still living. But I feel like if I would have kept going that way, um, me on the outside probably would not have stayed as well as I did. My grades probably would have gone lower, and I started going to my first couple meetings, and I was like, I don't really know what this is. I don't really care about this because it was just, it never immediately connected with me. I was kind of just talking, and it felt okay, but I was just like, I don't need this. You know, it was all fake. Just these people talking to each other to make themselves feel better about something that they can't change. And then I was like, well, that's the point. It kind of occurred to me that that's the point, is to learn to cope with it, learn to live around it. And I think probably the biggest thing that Narateen has definitely given me was it's a slogan, and every week we do slogans, and it's stupid. Well, it's not stupid, but it's simple. It is a very simple slogan of this too shall pass, and that has probably helped me in like every single like part of my life. That quote has probably helped me with all of it. And it's so weird how going to maybe 3 meetings and finally seeing that slogan and learning to apply it, and understanding it is helping me with my coping with my dad's addiction. It's so weird how those sort of connect in a way. It's just, it's so odd, and that's why I kept coming back, was for more moments like that, for more things I could apply to my life to make myself better, and to make the people around me better, and to make the people around me feel better. Um, and now I'm at the point where I'm finally talking to my dad again. Um, I walk around with him. I still see him. And he's no longer with that girlfriend, and things look better for me. I don't. I highly doubt in the near future things are gonna get any better for him, but it's still nice to just be around him, because he's still my dad. You know, even though he's never really acted like it, he's still the guy I wanna hang out with, and walk downtown with, and I still do, but I still know to keep the healthy boundaries that Narateen has helped me create with him. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about that.
All right, then. Thank you so much. I want to make sure we have time for Cameron as well. What a beautiful share. Thank you for being so brave. And I'm going to introduce everybody to Cameron, who's also a Narateener, and I believe your home group is also Ontario, Canada.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Cameron, and my qualifier is my dad. He's been an addict as long as I can remember. I remember just always asking where he was, and my mom would be like, "Oh, he's at work," and I'd be like, "Oh, okay." And I just thought it was normal not to have a dad around most of the time. And when he was around when I was younger, I just remember them fighting and the chaos that came with it. Like, there'd be yelling and silence, and then dad would be gone for however long. And when I found out my dad was using, I thought I could fix it. I thought hey, it's me. I'm his daughter. I can just go talk to him. I could not stop it. I remember one time my grandpa was babysitting me, and my mom was at work. She called and she's like, okay, you're gonna stay at your grandpa's a little longer. And I was like, okay. And I just had a bad feeling, a really bad feeling. And so when my mom came to pick us up, she looked at us and said, okay, your dad broke the garage door. He kicked it in. And I remember not believing her at first. Just like, okay, mom, okay. We went home, we looked at the garage door, and there was wood all over my room, over the room over there. And I remember I was more disappointed than angry at the time. Sorry. How could he do that to us? Like, why? Why? Were we not good enough for him? And that was just kind of when I realized how this wasn't normal, how everything wasn't as normal as at school. My dad wouldn't make it to any of my events. He didn't even make it to my elementary school farewell. Kids at school started to notice he wasn't there, and I'd get called fatherless at school. And anytime I did anything, they'd be like, oh, that's fatherless behavior, or something along the lines of that. And it was embarrassing, and I hated him for it. Why couldn't he be like the other dads who showed up to those school events, who were there for them? And I just kind of shut down after that. It was like, it wasn't fair at all. And despite him not showing up so many times, I couldn't help but be disappointed every single time. I remember him not showing up to visits. He was supposed to. I'd sit there waiting at the table, waiting for him to show up to those visits. Never did. He'd plan like family trips and then not end up showing up. So, and it was just a lot of disappointment, I think. And there was a lot of unkept promises. And I think that's what really kind of did it for me. Sorry, I'm just trying to get my thoughts together. And those times he did come to visit, he seemed distracted, distant, and it honestly looked like he didn't even want to be there. He just was there just to be there and not actually to visit us. He would lay on the couch and go on his phone and just wouldn't really talk or pay attention to us. And that's when I realized I can't change him. I can't help him. I can't change him. I can't control him. And I was really upset one night, and my mom came downstairs and we talked about it. And that's when she told me about her Nar-Anon meetings. And at first I thought it sounded dumb. I thought it was like, okay, you're ridiculous. But she managed to convince me to try Narateen out. The first meeting made me really doubt it, but my mom was set on helping me find a meeting that I was comfortable with. My second one, I found a group I really liked. And at first I was just kind of there. I listened, I spoke a bit. I wasn't really taking anything from it though. I was just there. It's like, okay. But after a while I started to actually get into it. Like after I chaired for the first time, I was actually looking into the readings out of the meetings, and I just started noticing small changes, like just like less, like just a more positive attitude, just understanding that I can't change or control him. And yeah, that's all I have to say.
Thank you so much, Cameron. We really appreciate both you and Caroline being with us today. I know that your facilitators from your group are really, really proud of you. I know For kids, this is, I hate to call you kids, for teens, it's a kind of a big deal to speak in front of a large group of people. And I thought you guys were fantastic, and we all really appreciate it. I want to ask Doris or Dennis, if either one of you as adult facilitators, because we're always trying to recruit volunteers for the Narateen program. And since you guys helped me find Cameron and Caroline, if there's anything you'd like to say about your experience being adult facilitators and how you got involved and what it's been like.
Thanks, Ken. I think I'm going to go first, Dennis. He steals the light. Oh my God, Cameron and Caroline. Oh my God. You inspire me so much. The courage, the honesty, the everything, that is just amazing. So, and I just appreciate you guys being here. Narateen was a big passion for mine. I started, I had to start developing the guidelines and things like that in order to have Narateen meetings in our region. And that was a long process, but I am so grateful that we were able to start our first meeting some time ago. But you know what? It's pandemic that really got us online, and Cameron and Caroline are nowhere near me, but they were able to come on the meeting because virtually that's what it is. It's so easy to get on a meeting. And like I said, they inspire me. They're just amazing. And they work so hard in their lives, and they just want their lives to be happy like I did. I had 2 kids myself that were affected by the addiction, but Narateen grew into my passion and service in Nar-Anon and to Narateen, and it continues. And I just want Narateen to grow. And if there is anyone who's interested in growing the Narateen program or finding out information on how they might even assist, there are a lot of us on here that would have answers and would love to have someone else help grow the Narateen program. There's not very many in the whole world. So they need it. They need a place to go to be supported by their peers, not by us so much, but by their peers. And I'm really happy with our group. I think we have about 5 or 6 now that are core teens, and hopefully it just keeps growing. So thank you, Caroline. Thank you, Cameron. You guys are absolutely amazing. So keep coming back.
Thank you, Doris. I'm going to mention, just to reiterate what Doris said about it's a worldwide fellowship, and Narateen is available worldwide in actually more in several languages. They recently started Narateen in Colombia, South America. So there are Spanish-speaking meetings. I know in Southern California, we do have a lot of Spanish-speaking youth. So if you could let them know that that's now available. Dennis, did you have anything to add?
Yeah, just quickly, Ken. Appreciate the service that all you guys are doing and stuff at World Service Narateen. Without you guys there, this stuff wouldn't be available for the teens. And just for the teens themselves, I've been doing this facilitating for probably about 4 years now, and it's amazing how much I learned from these teens when they share their experience, track, and hope. For me, similar to you, Ken, I grew up in a lot of addiction in our family and stuff like that, and I don't know if Narateen would have been there for me when I was when I was young, whether I would have ended up going through my addiction problems too as well. When I came into I'm also in another 12-step program, but I've been in Nar-Anon about 7 years, and I didn't realize how much chaos I created in my family's life through my own addiction until I came into Nar-Anon. And I believe one of the other speakers that were speaking there just a little while ago, saying how it changed her life. I didn't realize the compassion and the forgiveness and everything until I came into Nar-Anon. So I'm grateful for that. But the teens in our meeting, as a facilitator now, when there's 3 or 4 teens, whatnot, all I do is just sit back. They they run their own meetings. They just do a wonderful job, and it's awesome. And I think if you really want to get the full perspective of the Nar-Anon program, you become a facilitator. Go through the process of becoming a facilitator. The teens they need you, they need us, and I know I will continue to keep on doing this as long as I can. Just in to appreciate people's time, I'll shut up because I could go on for a long time.
Thank you so much, Dennis. And I really should ask Karen. I don't want to put you on the spot. I don't think you expected to speak, but Karen is our World Service Chair. Is there anything you wanted to add?
Oh, well, thanks, Ken. No, I wasn't expecting to speak. Just so everybody knows, that's in Nar-Anon and other 12-step programs, getting a Narateen meeting started is not the same as getting a Nar-Anon meeting started. There's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of preparation, because we're interacting with younger children, younger people. And it's important to have a place for the teens to be able to come. It's very disappointing when we do all this work and we show up and no teens are there, because we know they're there. We know that they're out there, but we also hear time and time again from the teens that do show up that, I was told several times that I need Narateen, but I didn't want to go to Narateen. I don't need it. But just like me in my Nar-Anon program, I don't need it. I'm not the one causing the drama and the chaos, but I was. I didn't see it. I was in denial. So it's important for us to keep a place open for Narateen meetings. And yes, the South Africa has a new meeting. It's now on our website. So any of you teens who can make it to the South Africa Cape Town meeting, join them. Pacific Northwest region is the only one on the West Coast currently. We have some other meetings, hopefully starting soon. But yeah, attend as many meetings as possible, and hope to see you in our meeting sometime soon.
Thank you, Karen.
Thank you.
Yes, well, the next big agenda, I guess, throughout Narateen is outreach, because we have to find ways to let teens and their parents know that it's there. Are there any questions for any of for either of our teens or any of our Narateen volunteers?
Hi, this is Lori. I am also in Ontario.
Hi, Lori.
Let me get my video on here. I just had a shower. My hair is all messed up. I am an adult child of an addict and alcoholic, and I so personally benefited from hearing both Carolyn and Cameron share, even at my age of 54. I completely resonate still with the stories. My dad is now 85. And one of the things that, and he, found some 12-step recovery. But one of the things that I learned was that I love my dad, and that sometimes just spending time with him and just smelling him, just having a hug with him was far more valuable than for me having no contact. And he just came to visit me for my birthday in May. He lives in Cape Breton. And it was really wonderful. And had I chosen to just be mad at him all this time, my life would have been different. But anyways, I want to say your stories help me also. So I guess my question for Carolyn and Cameron is, do you see any value for you of hearing the stories of adults that were children of addicts?
Cameron or Caroline?
Okay. It does, yeah. And it helps me see that things do get better and things will change for the better. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah, I 100% second that. Yeah,
Oops, you muted yourself.
my bad. Just seeing all these people who grew up to be like just very successful people with like families, and it's just it gives you a lot of hope. I love seeing that, and I love seeing adults who were children of addicts talk about where they are now. I love that.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I'd like to say thank you to both of our teams for speaking. I too am the program. I came to the program because my daughter being an addict. My mom was an alcoholic and did drugs, and I grew up in that environment. So I appreciate you guys bringing up using the tools that you guys had at the time to try to cope with it, the masking and presenting that everything is okay, because that's how I was. I always did really good in school. I dove into that so that way I wouldn't have to deal with what was happening at home. But finding these rooms to help give yourself new tools to be able to deal with it. And I know that it's really scary as an adult to speak in front of a crowd. So being a teen and doing that, I just want to applaud you guys for being of service today, and that you guys absolutely brought more value to us into this.
So Lauren had in the chat, there was a very good question about whether parents should attend the same meeting as their teens. And we really discourage that, because teens need to be able to share without feeling inhibited. And while it's really useful to have, if there's a sober parent or a parent who is able to help them through this in their homes, the meetings are where you should be able to share with anonymity and confidentiality. Sometimes the kids want to talk about their parents or things like that. So parents should find a Nar-Anon meeting for themselves and let their kids gain as much as they can from the Narateen meeting. I also want to further explain, we touched a little bit about what an adult facilitator does at the meetings. They don't actually have to do much other than ensure the safety and security of the meeting. And then if the kids have questions about the procedures, about what's conference approved literature, about what crosstalk means, those kinds of basic things, just to make sure that the meetings really should look mostly like a regular Nar-Anon meeting. And the adult facilitator is sort of there to keep it on track.
Yes, the teens chair their own meeting. The adults are just there to make sure that it's a safe place. We always have 2 facilitators at every meeting, and every facilitator has gone through a screening process, background check, criminal region.
Right.
Yes, and the teens need a quiet place without distractions, a private place. So that, yes, they can feel comfortable sharing. It's all about safety.
I have a question. Is there a separate reading book for Narateens, or the same sesh book?
We're currently using Alanon data readers, and they can be found on our World Service website under Narateen, the Narateen section, and in the literature page.
The Lit Committee is very close to publishing 31 Days in Narateen. We need a couple of more submissions from teens, and we'll be there. And I also want to point out this book, the Narateen 12-Step Workbook. Sorry that it's cutting off on my screen. but it is very similar to the big yellow book we use for STEPS workshops. Only it's a little bit more of a workbook and a little bit more geared towards teens. And I actually know adults who use it because it's similar to this book, Nar-Anon 36, which most of you have seen. And a lot of adults are using the Narateen 12-step workbook because it's a little bit easier, and there's also a lot of places where you can write your thoughts and work the steps on paper. So it's great for both teens and adults, and it's available on the Nar-Anon website.
And I would like to say that, you know, one silver lining of COVID was bringing the virtual meetings to light and allowing this to be a safe space for everyone, but especially for the teens, because so many times they don't have transportation to get to a meeting. They don't have a license yet. They can't drive themselves there. All they have to do is find a quiet space in the corner of their room away from the attic to be able to take a meeting and to be able to find some support and camaraderie with others their age. So I know I really appreciate that. Any other questions or comments? Well, with that, I would like to thank Ken and all of our Narateen posse, as I think you referred to them, for coming on and joining us today. We really appreciate you coming in and giving us another perspective of being able to not only see what it is to be an adult loved one of an addict, but also how it can especially affect our children. So thank you again for coming. We are running a little ahead of schedule, so we don't have any additional speakers. But I do have a couple of announcements. We were talking about the Narateen literature and such. World Service is always looking to produce new materials. Part of what we have in our tool belt is the service materials, the materials we have that we use within our meetings, the workbooks to help us work our steps. And none of these things would be available if it wasn't for the work of our fellow members who have gotten together to help create these pieces of work for us to be able to use. So if you're interested in that, I know the World Service Litcom committee is always looking for folks to help to develop this, having members submit writings to the World Service organization to be able to create, things like the fetch book with all the individual writings and such. So if you feel like you can put your story down on paper and express yourself that way, we would love to have you submit that. You do have to sign a release form, which is available on the World Service site. But we would love to have you send in that those writings so that way we can continue to help produce new materials. Also, as a reminder, we are recording this today. We will have an audio posted on the SoCal website post-event. So if you didn't, if you weren't able to attend the whole day and you wanted to hear the other speakers, you can feel free to go back and have and review that. It'll probably, I'd say, within a week or so, we should hopefully have it posted because it will take a little bit of editing. So thank you, Ken, for being of service and helping with that. As you guys know, this is our annual fundraiser. So again, if you have not contributed today, we ask if you choose, if you feel in your heart to choose to do so, Ken has posted it in the chat where you can send those donations. Last year we raised $2,711. Currently we are just over $1,900, so we're not quite where we were last year. And we do use these funds to keep our region going and to be able to continue the outreach and support for all of our local families. So if you have not donated, we ask you to please consider doing like to thank all of our community members again for being on and helping us to put on another successful event this year. It takes a tribe for us to put it all together with the tech support and hosting and creating the literature, the materials, the program and flyers, securing the speakers, and all the waivers and things for them to speak today. It all is a group effort, and I would thank all of you for that. I would like to thank the speakers again for coming on and spending some of your time with us today and providing us those stories of struggle and hope and giving us new perspective of whether it's the addict or the loved one or someone who has no. Thank you so much. If you have any questions for our speakers, we have posted in the chat the email for the SoCal region. Feel free to email us who you would like to connect with, and we'll forward that on to the speaker so that they can connect directly with you, just for anonymity purposes, so we're not posting their personal information. With that, I'll open it up for any final thoughts or questions or anything before we wrap up for today.
I think our region should also express a lot of gratitude towards Roxanne, who has been our region chair for the last several years and has been absolutely amazing with her service. Thank you so much.
Amen.
Thank you so much, Ken. I really appreciate that. And another time for our service workshop that is a week from today. It's 8:30 to 10 o'clock. We will be talking about the actual service structure of the Nar-Anon, what that looks like, what are some of the major reasons why people aren't of service and why those shouldn't be a reason to not be of service, and how Nar-Anon can help you in your own recovery through service. So we hope that you're able to join us for that. We'll be talking about the different roles actually within our region and the positions that are opening. As I stated in the beginning, I am term is ending in October, and I will be focusing on other areas of my life at the end of my term. And so we have other folks that are wanting to step up, but we need more because so many people that are in service are wearing multiple hats, and it's really challenging. But I don't know about you guys. For me, if this program wasn't here, I would not be here. I would be a mess. And so we really need people, members of our organization, to come together and be of service to be able to help us all have this valuable program still be here. So with that, I'd like to again say thank you for joining us on this Saturday morning and now afternoon, spending part of your day with us to hear the speakers. And I hope you all have a blessed day.
Thank you, everybody.
This has been the Southern California Nar-Anon Family Group's 2023 Narathon event entitled Embracing Today. The hosts were Southern California Regional Chair Roxanne and Committee Member Ken. The adult speakers were Roxanne, Debbie, Joel, and Danny. The Narateen Fellowship was introduced by SoCal Narateen Chair Ken. The teen speakers were Caroline and Cameron. Also speaking are Narateen adult facilitators Doris and Dennis, as well as Narateen World Service Chair Karen. If you'd like to find a group or meeting to attend, please visit our website at naranonsocal.org/find-a-meeting. Our meetings are free, and the only qualification for membership is that of the addiction of a loved one. And as a reminder, this event was intended to be a fundraiser for the Nar-Anon Family Group's Southern California region. Please visit our website at naranonsocal.org and click on the Donate button on the homepage. Use the Comments dialog box to indicate if you're donating to our Narathon fundraiser. If you are donating on behalf of a group, please also include your group ID number and meeting name. And please remember to tap the like and subscribe buttons for this video on our YouTube channel. Keep coming back. It works if you work it, and it won't if you don't. So do it, because you're worth it.